Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. The sun was just showing its orange edge above the horizon. Wendy was already up. She was accustomed to getting up before dawn and had plenty of things to do by lunchtime. And in the village it was impossible to live differently because the relatives were the ones who liked to go low in bed. The neighbors looked, to put it mildly, with disapproval. However, William, Wendy's husband, looked down on local Moors as he thought that these rules did not apply to him personally. On this August morning, he too resented his wife's impetuous activities. Without opening his eyes, he shouted from under the blanket, "Wendy, what kind of person are you? Thinking only of yourself." The woman parried without delay. "If I thought only of myself, you would have starved to death long ago or covered yourself with beauty from dirt." The man was not well versed in the terms that his mistress liked to flaunt, but he knew unmistakably that beneath the city lurked something terrible with fear and loathing. He was as shaken as if he had been drinking bitter for a week. So, as befitted a real man, he decided to voice a second objection to his half. "Wendy, I wonder if it gives you pleasure to frighten me and my daughter. Where did you learn such words? You live with you, and you'll learn a lot of things. What about you? What about your darling? My daughter's used to riding on my backbone. But at some point this song must end, because my patience is not infinite." The woman deftly picked up with one hand at once 4 cans and the same number of 3-liter containers. It turned out that in her other hand at the contact of glass and surrendered a nasty squeaking sound, from which William again twitched. In a burst of indignant emotion, he threw back the blanket. The man pounded his fist on his knee, hoping that it would have the desired effect on his spouse. "Wendy, are you doing this on purpose? You know what that scraping does to me. Couldn't you have prepared the damn jars last night or at least carried them one at a time?" William was outraged. It seemed to him that Wendy was deliberately getting on his nerves to bring him to a scandal. And there's nothing to make a scandal of. Total disrespect for the head of the house. With no regard for her husband's displeasure, the women took the dishes out onto the veranda and returned to the long room in which William had been fond of seclusion for some time. Wendy flopped her plump arms against her sides, and it gave the man a childish thrill. "Wendy, you have no idea how stunning you look right now, all against the backdrop of the rising sun. If you still had a paddle in your right hand, then the woman's eyes would glisten menacingly. Or hey, you Mozart of a man, I can run to the barn for a paddle if I need one. Or my daughter, she's happy to carry it. But I don't think you'll be happy with this object." William, after these words, skewed again, and his right eye even twitched. He realized that he had mentioned the paddle in vain. And to switch the conversation in more favorable directions, he decided to demonstrate his knowledge of creativity in front of his wife. "Wendy, Mozart was a composer, not an artist. You can't be so ignorant. Yeah, I don't give a damn who suffered what when painting a woman with a paddle. You jump one day, you take me out and I'll turn you in." Though from the lips of his wife, more than once sounded such threats, the man couldn't get used to them. The fact is that William had from birth a very fine mental tuning, and he tried to get through to the consciousness of his beloved Wendy. "I don't know why I've earned such deep disrespect from you. I'm your legal spouse, and where are you going to put me if I'm not a bad person?" Wendy sighed. "You, William, without the law. Normal husbands at least do something useful at home, and you are a bum all day long, stinking with excess of feelings." The woman exclaimed and told me, "Mama Wendy, don't marry that guy." I didn't listen to her. I believed in love. And now I pray. You're William, like a parasite sucking on my body. The man's patience broke, and he jumped up from the sail of the long sofa. "Wendy, there's a limit to everything. You're crossing every line by insulting me." Replying to Wendy in the same tone of voice that she had been carrying on the conversation with him, William simply could not. In the first place, because he has a delicate mental organization, and secondly, if Wendy got angry enough, something heavy might fly. Woman smirked, "Parasite. FYI, is not a swear word. It's just an underdeveloped creature that can't do anything. Sounds exactly like your portrait to me, William. You've been a leech on me for 22 years, and you're not coming off. Wendy went proudly to the veranda, and William could not find his composure after such unfair insults to his wife. But he wasn't going to give up, so he pulled on a tank top for the house and followed his wife. Wendy, let's talk like civilized people for once in our lives. The man became so emotional that his pathologically thin legs began to twitch spontaneously. Wendy laughed. William, don't be ridiculous. Why are you kicking around like a horse? If you have to go to the bathroom, run to the bathroom, or you'll have an accident. Wendy was making fun of him. Not the first day. It's not the first day. Not for years. Every Monday, William swore to himself that he'd be different. He'd have everything remodeled, so that he'd be a new man. Not even Wendy. But the urge passed quickly. All that was left was laziness, and William calmly postponed his makeover until the following Monday. By the law of the genre, it was up to William to say the next line. But the appearance behind William's back radically changed the mise-en-scene. The girl wiped her eyes with the back of her palm and stared at the ancient walkers seen on the wall. Oh my God, what are parents really talking about? Shouting at such an early hour, while the head of the family scratched the back of his head and thought about how to respond to a fair comment from his daughter. Wendy with a sneer said, I'm another family of parasites, raised his voice all over the field like a clone. Father and daughter exchanged a glance that did not escape Wendy's attention. She was shoving the cucumbers into the jars with exasperation, but this process was automatic because all her attention was focused on the troublemaker. Daughter, at your age, you should know that a normal woman who cares about the welfare of her family should get up early. And you shouldn't take an example from your father, who's about to get ulcers on his flanks. William didn't let her mother finish. She in one leap overcame the distance between her and her mother and hung on her mother's neck. Darling, don't start the morning with a scandal. I understood your hint, and I'm ready to always be equal to you. To say what at this minute I can help you. Wendy threw into the basin 2 cucumbers, which did not fit into the jar. You scumbag, Lisa, you know how to get on my pain in the ass. Well, if it's asking for it, there's a job for you. Only first tidy yourself, bring obeyed, and obeyed the girl smacked, but break in the cheek and ran to dress. Wendy looked sadly at her husband. Our daughter has grown up, and you and I have not noticed. William caught the change in his wife's mood. He immediately decided to take advantage of the temporary truce to consolidate it. This, Wendy, is the law of life. We get older, the kids get older. So it's time for you to change your tactics. Your commands aren't working anymore. And it's embarrassing. After all, except for me, you have no one closer, and you all wagering, all on me. The woman looked fondly at her husband. What could she take from him? She knew very well what an underdog he was. But love is evil. All right, William, I'll give you credit for sucking up. I'll try not to push you. Now, do me a favor. Put the water tank on the gas. The man rushed to do the job, but in the excitement of labor, he didn't fit in. He poked at the doorway and began to rub his bruised, long forehead vigorously. A woman came in and burst out laughing. No, this is overkill after all. Underdogs come in many varieties, but her husband outdid them all. Why are you so clumsy? Run to the refrigerator. They put it in the freezer, or you'll get a black eye. I don't want the neighbors to think I'm being abusive. Cursing the narrow doors and his fate, the man rushed into the kitchen. A few seconds later, a sound came from there, from which it was easy to tell that the freezer had also given the owner of the house an unpleasant surprise. Wendy shook her head. God, at least they put a personal nanny on the man. He can't do anything human. He's liable to make himself an invalid. Then it's the end of the line. The mistress quickly told the jars and removed yesterday's harvest of cucumbers and appreciated her work with pleasure. Well, now it's all in order. It remains to make the brine as loud as possible. The woman shouted to Lisa, I need your help. Get the salt and vinegar. From the back of the house, there came the sound of Mom's now, and in less than a minute, William appeared on the veranda with a packet of salt in his hands. Wendy's cheerful mood instantly vanished. "What have you got on your mind?" Wendy looked at her daughter with the same look she had recently given her father. Lisa was surprised. "Salt, like you asked. It's extra. Pickles need regular coarse salt. Didn't you know that?" William was not confused. "Imagine, Mom didn't know. I don't can cucumbers and tomatoes every day. And I've hated all kinds of vegetables and jam since I was a kid." Wendy even turned pale with surprise. Her eyes narrowed unkindly. "But now she's gonna get it from Daddy's little girl too." "Oh, now you're talking, are you? Got a taste of city life. But that's okay. I'll bring you back to your senses in no time. As soon as I see your rations, you'll love pickles and cottage cheese." Lisa realized she had gone too far. She pouted capriciously and snuggled up to her mother's shoulder. The girl looked like a sly fox. "Mommy, you've got it all wrong. And I'm not refusing to help you, but I can't keep everything in one head at once. I have to memorize so much information a day at work that by evening I forget my own name. And you're talking to me about salt." The head of the household came from around the corner. "It's true, Harry, you're on the girl's ass early in the morning. You want me to go to the store and get some salt. Give me the money. I'll be right back." Wendy gave her husband a scornful look. "Just in case, let the goat in the garden. William, you and money are incompatible. And the stores still close. Let Lisa go to her grandmother. She always has salt and sugar in stock." The girl raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Why, Mom?" Her mother looked at her daughter condescendingly. "You are certainly not of this world. It seems that all your life lived in the royal palace. It's good for the soil. It's also used to control various plant pests. William is more confident now. In short, the daughter goodness is transferred to one known substance." William knew that now the parents would again clash in a verbal duel, but did not wait for this moment. Going to the woman at the wall was a convenient excuse to get away from home for a while. Although she disliked her father's mother, but in the current situation it was better to meet with a harmful babushka than to listen to the scolding of her parents. Although the village was fundamentally no different from 1,000 similar settlements, a few peculiarities that gave color to this place could still be distinguished. The first peculiarity was strong family traditions. This meant that all significant events were celebrated here in a big way, and the number of invitees sometimes reached up to 100 people, if not more. By the way, according to the last census, the population of the village was almost 2,000 people, which even by modern standards corresponded to a large settlement. And if to the bulk of the residents to add their urban relatives, you can imagine the scale of weddings, anniversaries, which were regularly celebrated here. Therefore, the catering facility continued to operate successfully in the village. During the day, it functioned as a regular canteen, and in the evening it was used to celebrate a significant event. Local youth also liked to gather in the cozy hall, where you could have a good time without parental supervision. The second village peculiarity was a consequence of the first. Each new generation simply had to memorize these very traditions in order to pass this heritage on to their scumbags. Personal likes or dislikes were not taken into account in this very situation after marriage. It turned out that Wendy, a girl madly in love with the local accordion player, William never once thought about what kind of relationship she would have with her mother-in-law. Wendy Kelly's mother more than once warned her daughter, "Wendy, you can't go with your feelings. William is not what you think he is. He's weak and weak. A husband like that will be hard to live with." But his mother's a real hellcat. There was nothing superfluous in the characterization that the elementary school teacher gave to the future relative. On the contrary, to this description it was possible to add many more remarkable features that possessed the main scandalist of the village. After all, the nursery was feared not only by adults, it frightened naughty children, for example. And you'd often hear that if you didn't eat all the porridge, Molly will come and take you away for re-education. The name Molly was given to the old woman long after she arrived in the village. Then Molly distinguished herself by calling all the inhabitants of this wonderful place with a capacious word Kelly to her husband, who decided to wait out the hard times in her homeland. She said, "Where did you bring me? There's only Kelly here who's studying. Not a single normal face." Since then, the villagers have held a grudge against the wife of the new collective farm chairman. However, he soon disappeared from the family nest with his mistress, leaving behind his wife and young son. But the villagers did not pity the abandoned and took the side of the traitor. Any man would run away from such a beast. Not only does she consider herself superior to others, but she calls everyone names. To this conclusion, someone added a succinct, "Molly. She is Molly," so carelessly thrown against the wall, and the word stuck to her. And William became known as Kelly's son. The boy was very shy and took the offensive nickname with shame. Many times he tried to reason with his mother. "Mom, you shouldn't swear. I'm not fighting with the neighbors. If you don't care about your own reputation, think of me." Molly didn't recognize anyone's opinion, so her son's request was like a red rag on a bull. "It's not for you to tell me what's wrong. Your daddy ran off and dumped everything on me. I've been working my ass off. I'm trying to make things right for you. And instead of gratitude, I get complaints." Indeed, her mother spared nothing for William. True, the high maternal love she showed not so much for the sake of sincere care for her son, but in order to rub the neighbors' noses in it. After all, no one in the village wanted to communicate with her. Even the nearest neighbors avoided her. If they happened to meet on the same road to visit her house, no one visited them either. Even William's school buddies categorically refused such offers. The boy was very worried about this, and his mother calmed him down. "Nothing, William. We'll get through this. I'll show them all who I am. Let them choke on their envy. I'll dance on their graves one day." The boy shuddered as he pictured this horrifying scene, but said nothing to the mother on the wall was one of those women who do not throw words to the wind. She began to slowly put her plan into action. William's mother worked at the very same catering establishment that had a dual purpose because there was always a lot of food waste. She decided to use them for her own good. "Mommy, why did you take them? Who will look after this animal?" The woman with a nonchalant look answered, "How we will take care of them. We'll see how it goes. Then we can have a pig for a uterus." Things went well, but most of the work fell on William's shoulders, and the boy couldn't wait till he graduated. Things got worse when his mother bought a cow. "William, look what a beauty I've brought. Now we'll have fresh milk and sour cream." Although the son did not share his mother's joy, he had to accept the cow. The boy's life became unbearable, and his mother treated him like a hired laborer. "William, you cook for the winter. Hay for the little ones. Buy you a moped." And he'd jump up early in the morning to do his mother's errands. After all, riding around the village on a moped was the dream of every teenager at that time. Very soon, William replaced the moped with a real motorcycle, and later he got a car. Having a personal vehicle increased William's self-esteem. The attitude towards him in the village changed drastically too. Now he did not lower his eyes to the ground, but walked with his head held high, listening to the admiring comments of his fellow villagers. "Look how the boy has changed. It's the life-giving power. The power of money. You might say he's the best at what he does." William also firmly believed in the power of money and began to treat mother with more reverence. In the fall, I enjoyed the care of her son, and she generously paid for this pleasure. It would seem that all acute issues in the family were eliminated. It remained only to decide on the choice of profession. William knew that his mother in her dreams sees him as a zoo technician, but he could not change his own childhood dream. After all, even at school, the boy brightly showed himself different talents. He sang well and tap danced dashingly. Kelly noticed the gifted boy in elementary school and always nominated him for the role of the host of school events. William perfectly coped with the most difficult text, for which he was recognized by the entire teaching staff. "Med will go far. Such a talent. He should be in good hands." One day, a whole delegation from the Regional School of Culture came to their school. Kelly decided not to miss such an opportunity. She showed the boy to the people who knew him. At the request of the teacher, William unashamedly demonstrated his skills in singing and dancing. The visitors were delighted and applauded the young nugget for a long time. When the applause died down, one important uncle asked his boy, "What would you like to be in the future?" William felt his importance because no one had ever talked to him on such important topics before. And his mother kept waving him away. "You don't understand anything about life yet. It will be as I say." And William had a dream of his own, because the man who asked the question inspired confidence. The boy blurted out, "I want to play the flute." The man raised an eyebrow in surprise and approvingly noted a good wish. "Let your father have you for now. And when you grow up, come to us." The soul feast was over before it had really begun. William lowered his eyes in shame. "My dad left me and my mom and took the harmonica with him." It was said with such intonation that the representative of the school could not understand what upset the child more: the departure of the father from the family or the disappearance of the musical instrument. Kelly was present during this conversation. She felt sorry for the boy to the core and invited him to visit. William was ready to cry, partly because no one had ever invited him to her home before. He broke the news to his mother. "I was invited to my house by our teacher on the wall." Molly looked at her son sidelong. "Well, go. Maybe they'll give you something tasty to eat. But don't stay there too long." That same evening, William went to visit. Kelly welcomed him warmly and introduced him to her daughter. Wendy made a lasting impression on the boy. The girl was not only good-looking, but she knew a lot of interesting stories about travelers and different animals. Despite the fact that she was 2 years younger than William, her knowledge exceeded the boy's horizons. After a hearty dinner that Kelly had prepared, the children marveled in the tick room, and William forgot about the existence of time. He arrived home later than his mother's appointed hour, for which he received a scolding from her. "What time did I tell you to be home?" William habitually lowered his eyes and, with a tremor in his voice, fed back to his family. "But I didn't notice." His mother raised her voice and even took a swing at him, something she had never allowed herself before. "Would you remember what I'm telling you? You'll stay home for a week. No going out, no visitors." During that time, just to subtract the pigs was the cruelest punishment. But William had no idea that his mother would go even further. The next day, during the big break, he saw his parents talking to Kelly, as the woman was actively gesticulating with her hands. The kid realized that he should not expect anything good from this visit. From a bad feeling, William, all inside, went cold, and he even hid under the stairs so that his mother would not find him. He stayed in this hiding place until the end of school, but he was still unable to escape home unnoticed. In the vestibule, he was detained by the teacher, said calmly, "William, skipping classes without a good reason is not good. By the way, your mom came to school today. She complained that you don't help her around the house." The boy was filled with indignation, and he shouted, "I help her by cleaning up after the pigs. If you knew how much I hate them." 2 large tears rolled down his tanned cheeks in peace. The teacher didn't hold back. She drew the boy to her. "William, you can't do that. It's not the animal's fault that your mom makes you do hard work, is it? You realize it's very hard on her alone, so she can be a little hard sometimes. We try not to argue with her as much as we can. Help." An unpleasant thought ran through William's mind. All adults for one. Here's Kelly running over to my mom's side. He wanted to think about something important, but he didn't have time, because the teacher said with a smile on her face, "Wendy was asking about you. You can come visit us anytime if your mom will let you." Only a few days later, William learned from casual witnesses that his mother had come upon the world Kelly. She reproached the teacher for leading other people's children astray. Despite the fact that he had always felt awe before his mother, the desire to restore justice was stronger. That's when he had his first confrontation with Kelly Wall. "Mom hurt the teacher for some reason. She's the kindest and she's nice to me. She has a cool daughter. She wants to be friends with me because I have no friends at all. He looked at his mother in an adult way, and for the first time she couldn't take it. Her imperious tone suddenly changed to a mumbling tone. "And you were his voice. Do I mind your teacher? Not at all. You can be friends with a bald devil, but only without harming the house." Thus was won the first victory over his crazy mother. William won his second victory by enrolling in a cultural school. Mother had to accept this fact. He returned to his native village after 3 years, a well-trained worker of the cultural front, and was immediately appointed director of the club. After this reinforcement, Molly became a very prominent figure in the village, and neighbors began to greet her. Even Miranda, who was considered the main troublemaker, now with respect, was paying her back. "Good day to you, Molly. How is William feeling in his new position?" Though such questions were like a balm to the heart, the woman answered them without her former arrogance, but with dignity. "He has already settled in. He wants to create a team. He was promised new instruments in the region." Miranda's little eyes sparkled. "An instrument is good, of course, but a good bride is even better," Miranda giggled. And Molly felt her heart seize up frantically in her chest. Just the thought of anyone daring to take her son away from her. It was panic-inducing. Forgetting her manners, the woman began to question the gossip with relish. "Miranda, if you know something, spill it nicely." Miranda's eyes went wide. "Oh, you don't know that your William is head over heels in love with the teacher's daughter." Her ears flinched because she had expected to hear a better argument. "Surprised the hedgehog in one place. I thought you knew something I didn't. It's the little things. William has been friends with Wendy since childhood, but my son is not thinking about getting married." Miranda made unthinkable eye movements again. "That's what you think. Young people these days love surprises. I once saw them kissing sweetly in the meadow by the river. Maybe they've already given you a grandchild, and you have no idea." Miranda was triumphant. Molly stood in the middle of the street at a loss. An inner voice insistently told her that William was a grown man, and you could not hold him by force. So accept the future fate of your mother-in-law. But Molly was not accustomed to surrender without a fight. She decided in advance that she would arrange a fun life for her future daughter-in-law. The woman knew perfectly well that the son easily falls under any influence, so she decided to preempt the actions of the enemy and to search for a convenient bride. Of course, Wendy herself did not suspect the secret plans of William's mother. She was finishing her studies at the veterinary school and came home only on holidays and vacations. Kelly was raising her daughter alone, and she didn't have extra money for Wendy's weekly trips. The girl learned all the news from her mother during long-distance conversations. One day, Wendy asked how William was doing. "He's visiting you." The question took the woman by surprise, and she answered with feigned cheerfulness. "Yes, I'm busy at work all the time, and William has no free time. Our villagers tell us he's going to start an orchestra. It's all about the instruments." Wendy realized that her mother was trying to avoid a direct answer. She didn't bother her with questions and quickly said goodbye. The girl came to the village for the weekend to see if the rumors that had reached her were true. And if you believe the rumors, her beau was not bored and even found a replacement for her. So the first thing she did was not go to school, to please her mother with her arrival, and went to the club. In the hearth of rural culture was in full swing rehearsal. Local talents, mostly unmarried girls, selflessly sang, and the young director of the club inspiredly played the accordion. There seemed to be nothing objectionable in the picture. But on the throwing of the eyes, Wendy immediately figured out the rival. She turned out to be Miranda's daughter, a former classmate. For this girl is firmly entrenched unkind word student. According to unconfirmed information, that C was not squeamish married men. And one day, one of the cheating wives gave her a dark one. People said that the woman so withdrew Love Maiden that she did not show on the street for a month. This story was then tried to be hushed up. The victim's mother told everyone that her daughter was attacked by hooligans. "You can't imagine, kind people, what these freaks did to my daughter. Not only did they take my purse and earrings, they broke my nose." Sympathizers asked a fair question. Why didn't they report the attack to the police? Miranda was confused and said the wrong thing. So he was on vacation, and when he came back, it was too late to look for the bandit. But the villagers, especially the women, understood perfectly well why Miranda didn't want to make a fuss. Later, the whole truth came out, but the daughter and her mother were not embarrassed by this fact. But it seems that Adriana did not learn her lesson well, and once again began to hunt for other people's husbands and fiancés. That's what Wendy thought, watching the rehearsals from a niche at the very end of the auditorium, which was not visible from the stage. The amateur group performed several famous songs under the accordion, and William thanked the girls. "Thank you all. The next rehearsal is on Friday." The girls rushed to the exit. Only Miranda remained on stage. The girl had a cheeky smile on her face and headed for the principal. "William, I don't remember my part very well. Maybe you can work with me individually." The young man was surprised at the tone. "I didn't notice any faults in your performance. You sing exactly according to the notes, and that's why." That is, she took another step and walked straight into the director. In a languid voice, she said, "William, if I can do everything without a hitch, why don't you make me a soloist?" While the young man thought about what to say, she threw her arms around his shoulders. Wendy could no longer calmly watch the insolent damsel make an attempt on her fiancé. She resolutely came out of hiding and headed toward the stage. "Is this how you rehearse?" William threw down his arms with longing. "Wendy, when did you get here?" "Right off the train and straight here." Wendy walked onto the stage, leaving her rival with an appraising stare. "Adriana, what are you batting your eyes at? Go under the bench." Such treatment angered the unformed soloist, and she, with her usual impudence, declared, "And who are you to tell me what to do? By the way, the club is a public place, and anyone can come here. A person can, but you can't." "Why is that?" Adriana stared at William, but he hurriedly averted his eyes. Wendy realized that she had the last word. "So the whole point is that you don't fit the definition of a human, by all accounts. And this animal feeds on carrion." Adriana, eyes bulging. "William, tell me, have you at least a word?" Young man has already fully come to normal and tried without prejudice to divorce the warring parties. "Girls, there's no need to quarrel." "Adriana, I'll see you on Friday." "And about the soliloquy?" "I'll have to think about it," although there were no witnesses to the fight at the club. The whole village knew about it in great detail by evening. Kelly read Wendy's daughter. A self-respecting girl should be above such squabbles. "Frankly, I didn't expect you to be so outrageous. You're imposing on William." Wendy was not even offended at her mother and reasonably noted, "Mommy, you measure everything by outdated standards. It's a different time, and you have to fight for your happiness." The always poised Kelly lost her temper this time. "And you think William is worth fighting for? He's neither fish nor flesh." "A little bit. Is that what he is? You'll be lost with him because he can't stand up for himself, let alone his family. So be it. I like him just the way he is." Kelly knew it was pointless to change her daughter's mind, but she still hoped there would be another girl. Besides Adriana, those terms that would fascinate William. The solution, the exact same problem William's mother was battling. Since the number 107 did not transpire, she was feverishly searching for a replacement for her candidacy, and time was working against her. Complicating matters was the fact that after Antonina was rudely knocked off, Wendy Miranda stopped noticing Autumn trying to establish a relationship with her. William's mother was the first to make a move toward reconciliation. She showed up at the lost Miranda's house herself. "Are you blowing on me? I don't even know who I am." That Wendy just drove in from somewhere and showed up out of the blue. The woman spoke so sincerely that Miranda believed her. "Are you telling the truth? You didn't build this. Shame on me. I got baptized. God be with you. How could I do such a thing? What do you want?" "I swear, on my cow." Miranda laughed heartily. "Amazing things are happening. I never thought a cow could be more valuable than a person. Usually you swear on your mom or someone else in the family, and you're offering your cow. I'm surprised. The relationship between the buddies had matured. Together, they began to devise a plan to neutralize the unwanted bride. But their devious schemes were not to come to fruition. Because William and Wendy filed an application, they decided not to inform their mothers about it, so that there would be no unforeseen circumstances. William was the one who was most worried about it. Wendy, I think we'd better not wake the beast. I mean my mother. You know what she's capable of. So say on the eve of the wedding, and I don't think we need to make a big show of it for the whole village. Why waste money? We'll need it ourselves. William hadn't expected such a turn, but he was delighted with the woman he'd chosen. Wendy, you're a unique girl. Everyone dreams of a wedding, a big dress, and all the trimmings. But you don't. The girl flicked the groom on the nose. William, I'm just rational. The date of the painting was approaching, and the young had to reveal their secret. Kelly took this news not that with joy, but tolerable. But Molly didn't even shy away from her sister-in-law. She walked in without a whimper. Oh, what on earth is going on? Mother's the last to know he's getting married. Do I deserve to be treated like this? Or do you value a pebble more than your mother? William tried to calm his mother, who continued to rebuke him. What am I going to do alone nowadays? Dashenka. Wendy was tired of these wailing, and she decided to say her weighty word. We will help you, albeit not with hope. She looked at the girl. You will. I always keep my promises. Then Wendy did not realize that she was signing her own verdict. The future mother-in-law, having broken her promise to her, was not appeased. She wanted to talk to the wedding party face to face, too. In the evening of the same day, she, bringing with her a bottle on olives of her own making, came to visit Kelly when receiving guests. In the olden days, it was customary to give the bride a viewing, and I'm honoring the traditions of my ancestors, so to speak. Wendy's mother cordially invited the future relative into the house. Come by the wall, Molly. I'm all for observing customs, too. Then that's where we'll start. The guest went into the kitchen and put a pour on the table. What's this for conversation? The woman sat down on the hostess's table, making it clear that the deciding vote was hers. Kelly did not object to this order. I'm ready to hear you out, not Molly. And my intuition tells me that you intend to talk about the fate of our children. The guest spat the palm of her hand on the capital. Exactly. And I'll tell you right away, dear world, Kelly, that I'm dissatisfied with what? Everything. First of all, I don't like the fact that there's not going to be a wedding. Just think what people will say about us. Wendy's mother chuckled. They'll probably say we're stingy, sparing money. In the fall, Molly came to life. That's right. That's what I mean. Of course, your salary is low and you can't afford much. The landlady interrupted her guest. Why do you draw such conclusions? We live quite normally, not worse than others. The guest snidely remarked, and what kind of dowry will you give? A washing machine or a vacuum cleaner? Kelly shrugged her shoulders. What's wrong with household appliances? I think every family needs such appliances. William's mother stretched out on a chair, her face streaming and her tongue loose from the olives she had drunk. So she decided to come clean. And me to you, honored one. You're a teacher, but you don't understand anything about life. Today, everything is decided by money. Without it, you can't go anywhere. The guest reached for the bottle, but Kelly covered her glass with her palm. Thank you. That's enough for me. What's your pleasure? I'll have some more. Don't think I'm into this stuff. No, God forbid. And my husband was a non-drinker, a very decent man. Then why did he leave you and your son? Who knows? He was always missing something. He said I looked like a soldier. All I had of a woman was my looks. So he ran after women who didn't live up to him. Well, that's in the past. And now I care about the fate of my only son. He's used to getting everything without refusal. I bought him a motorcycle for years and then a car. And recently I gave him a German accordion. You have no idea how much such an instrument costs. In the region they promised to give him a good accordion. But they brought such junk. So I bought him a present. In the fall, Molly took in more air, as if preparing to jump into the water. Of course, a wedding is a special event, so the gift should be special. I've been thinking and thinking for a long time, and I've come to the conclusion that you and I should give the children a house. Kelly, ouch, that's a surprise. Unfortunately, it's beyond me. I don't have the means. The guest rejoiced. I didn't expect any other answer from you. You intellectuals, not accustomed to labor, and I all my conscious life back, and do not develop. And all for the sake of my only son. I've kept piglets and cows in the compartment. That's why I have money. Kelly got suspicious. What are you trying to say? That even though you are a teacher, but in fact you are a shill, which behind your soul you have nothing. The hostess began to lose her nerve. She wanted to just take and throw this smug fool out the door. But her upbringing did not allow her to stoop to such an act. Kelly very politely but firmly said, Molly, living room. I understand what you wanted to tell me. My daughter and I are not trying to infiltrate your family and do not claim your money. In principle, I am absolutely indifferent to what you give your children for the wedding. I don't think we should interfere with them. Let them decide for themselves whether love or money is more important to them. William's mother realized that the conversation was over. She rose reluctantly from her chair and took the half-empty bottle of tincture from the table. Without saying goodbye to the hostess, the guests left. Kelly still for a long time recollected in her memory separate moments of the conversation. She decided not to tell their daughter about the visit of her future mother-in-law. A few days later, the young couple married. The event was celebrated in the village canteen, which on holidays worked as a restaurant. Despite the narrow circle of invited gifts, there were many. Kelly gave the newlyweds a modern washing machine, which soothed the laundry itself. William's mother handed over a set of bed linens and a set of knives. The guests were outraged by such an act, because village people believed in omens and knew that a knife is a symbol of disease and trouble. Therefore, such items should not be given to loved ones. From the stories of Lisa's mother, knew they were already in the character of Kelly's grandmother. Of course, Wendy was silent about many things. For example, she did not tell her daughter about how her grandmother made a conspiracy on her. Nor did she talk about the little tricks like chicken feathers and needles that her mother-in-law had slipped into hidden places during her visits while Kelly was alive. Wendy still tried to influence her husband's mother. She helped her around the house and once rescued a cow. Then the poisonous pincers of guilt set in. But instead of gratitude, the daughter-in-law was always reprimanded with a caustic remark. Wendy, don't try to sound smarter than you are. But I did. So what? Drumming now. That's no mean feat. I could have handled it myself. What angered the mother-in-law most of all was the fact that it was not her, but Wendy, who was respected in the village as a human being and a high-class professional. After all, it was her daughter-in-law who had become a certified animal technician, not her son William. It was only a few years that he held the position of club director, and then he burned out like a light bulb. The result of such a negligent attitude to work was the disintegration of the team, which he had worked so hard to assemble. Several times the man was summoned to the regional department, begging him to come to his senses. But William also spit on all entreaties from a bird's-eye view. When his wife asked him, "What are you going to do now? How are you going to make a living?" he answered for me with enthusiasm, "Don't worry, I won't become an idler. I'm gonna play at weddings. Believe me, there are so many clients that you can run, really." At first, the accordionist was in high demand. But then he was invited less and less often, and he was forced under pressure from his wife to get a job at the post office as a driver. A new director was never sent to the club. Therefore, a huge barn lock was hung on the door of the cultural establishment. Later, a businessman with a strange surname bought the ruined building. Michael was a visiting bird, and from the way he spoke, you could sense that he had a rich past. His appearance in the village caused quite a stir. He drove up in a shiny black car and stuck his head out the window. Asked him how's life here. Aborigin's unfamiliar word confused the old men who happened to witness Misha's appearance to the people of the Earls. Only one old man swung his cane at the businessman's car and shouted, "You, that word, go back to where you came from. We don't need pans and other nobles here. We have enough of our own." He laughed heartily and drove on, and the witnesses scattered in different directions to warn the neighbors about the arrival of a suspicious type in the village. Kelly was one of them. And Kelly was the first to tell, and bald men go everywhere. Finishing her eyes by habit, she stunned her friend from the threshold. "Oh, what's going on? Definitely soon will be the end of the world." Molly indifferently asked, "Well, and what happened there again?" "A real oligarch. He just came to us, said that he would live here. He's living on his own. What do we care about him?" "Ask," she said indignantly, as if this man had the appearance of a criminal and chains on him. Miranda showed her hands and the magnitude of the gold jewelry. However, it was on Kelly's wall, but her story made absolutely no impression. But when the same Miranda already on the second day said, "Remember, I told you yesterday about the oligarch. Well, he's already bought our club. He wants to open a store there. And he also has a grudge against the farm. He wants it to come there too." At half a word, Miranda froze, and then smiled radiantly. "By the way, he buys milk from private people, and his price is great, so keep it in mind." The bear thanked Miranda for the useful information, and on her tip went to establish contact with the new villager. Of course, the mother-in-law didn't think it necessary to warn her daughter-in-law, who was responsible for collecting milk from private people, about her decision. When Wendy learned of her husband's mother's latest antics, she became furious. She decided to tell her mother-in-law to her face all that she had boiled up in her soul. For many years of coexistence, Molly did not expect the arrival of the daughter-in-law, and at the first minute was confused. "Wendy 3 myself." From the threshold began Wendy, although she tried to be extremely polite. Her voice rang against Molly's wall. "I can't understand what you're trying to accomplish. Instead of helping me in any way, you're always giving me a hard time. What's there to help you with? You're so proud and independent." "Yes, I am. But your son needs care. He can't do anything, and I'm sick of babysitting him." My mother-in-law was triumphant. "Now you're singing. I remember when you used to keep William in the dark. If he'd married Adriana, he'd have had a different life. You'll tell me it's my fault you raised a lazy son. I'd have kicked him out the next day, because a lazy brow like your son only gets in the way in the house." The women were arguing, and Lisa watched their faces, for such scenes happened very often before her eyes. She was used to them. William, too, was a bystander, as he put it, to the ladies' squabbles. He was careful to remain neutral. He enjoyed being the object of the two women's long-running argument. Winking at his daughter, he often said while Grandma and Mom are fighting, "My daughter will be like cheese and butter if they become friends. Then, daughter, your daddy's going to die." Since in the interests of the man was to heat up the hearth of the conflict, he asked his daughter to inform her mother on grandmother. The fault of the latter was that she all the milk from another village gives the oligarch. The girl was puzzled by such an assignment from her father. "Daddy, but it's not good to denounce relatives. Grandma might be offended by you. She doesn't know anything. And it's not snitching, it's a noble deed. Why don't you tell her yourself?" "I can't. You see what's going on here. We don't need to turn this conflict into a hot one. You're gonna tell your mom in confidence." Lisa did everything according to her father's instructions, but she didn't expect Wendy to react to the news. A storm of the most negative emotions. For probably an hour her mother scolded her grandmother with different words. She called her an adventurer and an old merismatic. There sounded words and worse, but the girl realized that her grandmother should not pass them on. She decided not to tell Kelly anything at all. After that incident, relations between the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law spoiled definitively. In the fall, Molly stopped visiting them, but through her granddaughter she was aware of family events. One day William caught her grandmother in tears. "The girl is not on a joke," scared Grandma. "What's wrong with you? Are you sick?" Shouldn't you call a doctor? Molly waved her away. A doctor won't help. Wendy's right. I'm the last one. I got ditched by that alligator. The girl recoiled in fright. Have you seen a crocodile? Where Molly grinned sadly. He's taken up residence here. And that bald guy who bought the house by the store. That's him. So he's an oligarch. I don't care. They're both dangerous animals. Did that Aurelian really fight with you? The old woman began to lose patience with her granddaughter's endless questions. What makes you think he fought? But you yourself said that he threw you. My girl, that bad man screwed me for money. I gave him all the milk from another village for 3 months. I denied myself, and he didn't pay me a penny. He told me all about it later. And yesterday he said that my milk was of poor quality, and he scrapped it all. So he won't pay anything for such goods. Now I'm sitting like an old woman at a broken trough and don't know what to do. William grew up a sympathetic child, and I really wanted to help my grandmother. Grandma should tell the police. Let that bald guy go to jail. Let Kelly hold the girl close to her. What don't you realize? There's nothing you can do to get rid of that ghoul. And the precinct won't help. You do this. Tell the moms to come to me from the farm for milk. The girl told Wendy almost verbatim the whole conversation. The woman looked fondly at her daughter. Lisa, you're like a carrier pigeon. Tell your favorite Kelly that tomorrow they'll come to see her, and I'll put her on the list. We've warned everyone in the village not to trust such rascals. Wendy turned to her husband. You know, William, that man tried to take over our farm too, but he's had a setback. William was trying to fix an electric kettle. What's the trick? Wendy looked affectionately at her husband. You've got a short memory, like a girl on the run. I've already told you that our farm is a community farm. To sell it, we need the consent of all the shareholders. William thoughtfully fiddled with the teapot. I think you're celebrating your victory early. Men like Michael can break anyone. All you have to do is put a lot of money up against them. Rarely a man can resist. Time has proven both mother and father right. No matter how hard Michael tried, he failed to get hold of the farm, which was making a good profit. But one of the shareholders bought the business. The new owner began by tightening discipline at the farm, and at the same time cut the wages of the employees. The unpleasant changes took place just before Lisa arrived. Wendy experienced these changes hard and was in a bad mood. So William did not dare to talk to her about a subject that was very important to her. But since she was so excited and eager to tell someone about the upcoming changes in her personal life, she decided to share her secret with her grandmother. And going for salt was a convenient excuse to leave the house for a while. The girl's face reflected her overflowing emotions, because Molly immediately asked her, "Why did you come so early?" "My mom sent me to get salt. She rolls cucumbers, and there was no coarse salt at home." The old woman muttered unhappily that a good housewife should always have a supply of matches and salt in the house. Lisa spoke up in her mother's defense. "We have extra, and we haven't used matches for a long time because we have a special lighter. Not the territory. What are you doing standing on the doorstep? Come in. I'll put the kettle on. I can see from you that you haven't had breakfast yet." The girl took off her shoes and tiptoed into the big room. She knew that her grandmother liked cleanliness and order, so she tried not to disturb this harmony. "Come to the kitchen. We'll have breakfast here. There's no need to make a mess in the hall." Lisa obediently obeyed this order. The kitchen was already flooded with sunlight, which shone through the stylish curtains. Along the wall, Molly quickly set the table and put 2 cups of you hot or a little cooler. "Grandma, you know I don't like boiling water. People's tastes change. Maybe that's what changed in the city. How would I know? You don't come much anymore." The last remark was said with an obvious reproach, and Lisa felt her face light up. "Grandma, but you know that I don't have time right now, and I can't take off work every week. I mean, I'm new to this company, but that's what weekends are for, to visit family and relax. Something tells me you have another reason." The old woman looked at her granddaughter's face with a sharp look, and Lisa felt an unpleasant heat in her mouth. She first took her eyes aside and began to rub the chrome on the tablecloth. "Grandma, you can't hide anything from you. You're testing thoughts from a distance." Trying to hide her embarrassment, Lisa took a sip from the cup and immediately burned her tongue. Ouch! How hot the bum in her mouth would pop out now. Along the wall, Molly took a sip of normal as well. "Tea is like tea. You're not talking my teeth. Spill your secrets. I can see your eyes burning. You got love in town." William exhaled noisily. "Oh, Grandma, you're a real piece of work. You're a real mind reader. Okay, don't be embarrassed. Go ahead. And I promise I won't say a word to anyone. Oh yeah, did Grandma ever lie to you?" Lisa touched her lips gently to the cup. "All right, I'll tell you first. Anyway, Grandma, I've got a young man. We work together. Actually, he's kind of my boss. He's so old." The girl laughed. "No, he's only 26. It's just that we have a lot of departments, and each one has its own manager. James was recently replaced by someone who moved to another company. Yeah, we only have 6 people in the department, so the supervisor isn't too big." Molly nodded. "As we had in the accounting department was the entire staff of 5 people, but necessarily attached to supervisor. Grandmother now, the supervisors are quite different. And they do the usual work. They just have more responsibility. And what's good about this James of yours?" Lisa blushed again. "He's honest and decent, well-mannered." The girl stammered about Kelly immediately taking the initiative. "And that was that." Lisa mumbled. "He's also cute. And chicks are chicks. You can't choose a husband by his good looks, can you? That's how they get married for joy. And a year later they run away to get divorced. Your grandfather was a handsome man too. But in life, he turned out to be a scoundrel." William begged Grandma, "Why are you going to extremes? Of course, I can't 100% say that James meets all the canons of a real man, but I'm easy and interesting with him. We had a lot in common and we've been dating for almost 6 months. Want to take a first guess? Have you had a chance to take your application to the registry office yet?" The granddaughter threw herself into her grandmother's arms. "You're like an X-ray, aren't you?" "Yes, we applied a week ago. And I came to tell you the good news. But it's not working out yet. My mom's not in the mood. She's been having some problems at work. I know, my farm girls told me. But it'll all work out sooner or later. And my daughter's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So you can't keep a secret like that for long. Perhaps this news will cheer Wendy up. Grandma, how great are you? It's just too bad you're not friends with Mom. Daddy and I love you both, but you're all at war with each other." The girl sympathized and began to kiss her grandmother. She gently pulled away from her. "Okay, enough sucking up. Take the salt. Run home. And your mother. Tell her not to put it off. She'll be offended." There was so much tenderness in the old woman's voice that William was stunned for a moment. But her grandmother gave her a push. "Run. Hurry up, Mother. You must be waiting for the salt." Perhaps the sun transferred the excess energy to Lisa because she ran down the street in a sprint, scaring the chickens and ducks. After talking to Nana and her heart felt light, she wanted to sing songs and laugh. It was a moment of real happiness. And the girl remembered her soulmate. "I wonder what my James is doing at the moment. I should call him." She dialed her fiance's number several times, but he kept dropping her call. The sunny mood vanished at once, and Lisa wandered slowly back to her house. She gave her mother the salt, but the important conversation was postponed again. At the same time, James was in a meeting with his boss. Everyone's faces were tense because they were discussing important business matters. James also tried to get into the speech of the chief, but his thoughts were somewhere far away, not by the way in his jacket pocket cell phone. The young man tried to discreetly remove the cell phone from his pocket. It was Lisa. And the thought flashed through his mind that she had happened there. After all, She knows perfectly well that there is always a meeting at this time. He dropped the call and returned the cell phone to its original place, but the device twitched frantically in his pocket again. He had to reset the call again. Knowing the restless nature of his fiancée, James decided to write her a short message, but he could not do it discreetly. Wildly rotating his eyes, the supervisor stared at him. "Mr. James, I see that you absolutely do not care about the company's affairs, or in your division everything is on an A+. Caught off guard, the manager slowly stood up and stammered his excuses. "We also have shortcomings, but we try to correct them as they appear." The supervisor took a higher tone. "We should not wait for these problems to appear, but try to prevent them. I've already noticed that you, Mr. James, take your responsibilities lightly, and your department is in chaos." James tried to object, but the boss invited him to a seat with one look, "And don't try to say anything in your defense. All the faults of your work, so to speak, are there. Employees of your department are walking around the city during working hours without shame and conscience, and some of them you let go on unscheduled vacations." James guessed that someone had reported to the boss that he had given Lisa a week's vacation. Since it was useless to contradict the boss, he waited in silence for the rest of the rant, but the main one was limited to a couple of sentences. "It's a shame, James, that you haven't lived up to our trust. We put you in charge of the department to give you a chance to grow. What about you?" James already knew what the boss was going to say, and he almost shouted, "I'll make it up to you, I promise." Smiles appeared on the faces of the meeting participants, and some of them even laughed. The tension gave a crack, and the chief himself devoted faces. "I see that I am the only one who does not know what everyone here knows." Sitting, one of the deputy chiefs said, "Zach, do not swear. You guys are so strong. He's going through a special period." Someone loud enough with a laugh said, "Mating season." Everyone giggled, and even the boss showed his perfect smile. "But as long as it's the first time, we'll forgive it, but on the condition that we are invited to the wedding. If it's no secret, who's the bride?" The same connoisseur of bird leashes cheerfully answered the girl who joined us not so long ago. "You must remember her. She came to us from the institute with a red diploma." Chief rejoiced. "How well I remember her. Once she brought me reports. Although we have office romances are not welcome. But if everything is serious, we can only wish her happiness." On such a major note the meeting ended, and James hurried to the exit. He wanted to hear the voice of his favorite girl, but no sooner had he dialed William's number than he was distracted again. James bitterly thought he would have to postpone the conversation until the evening, but his mother was waiting for him in the parking lot after work. "Nina," she looked at her son unhappily. "You're getting a little conceited. You've forgotten about your parents. I've been calling you all morning, but you've been throwing my calls away. Why don't you tell me what's going on?" James had an involuntary outburst. "So you're the one who's been calling me all morning, and I thought Lisa was trying to get to me." Nana gave her son a scornful look. "James, there's nothing wrong with you. Why such a pang of excitement? Have you been so badly influenced by this country girl?" Her mother's tone and the expression on her face spoke volumes about her attitude toward Lisa. She had disliked the girl from the first time she met her, and James imagined how shocked her mother would be when she heard about their imminent marriage. But he didn't want to discuss his marital status in a parking lot surrounded by strangers. He pushed his mother towards the car. "Nina, please, this is not the place for such delicate conversations." The woman went overboard. "Why are you pushing me into the car like I'm in a cage? My father is waiting for me outside the mall, and I want you to know that he's very unhappy with you and wants to talk to you. That's basically why I'm here." Since James blocked Nina's exit, she had to take the seat next to the driver. James slammed the door and got into the car as well. He calmly said, "Mom, what's with this stupid habit of yelling all over the street? By the way, I work here and my coworkers can hear your passages." The woman snapped back. "Let them hear you. Let them know who you're confusing with, Vasia. Mom, I'm asking you to watch your language. William doesn't deserve to be treated like this." "Nina," she screamed. Who the hell is she? You dug her up somewhere. Lisa works in my department. She graduated with a BA, by the way. What difference does that make? James couldn't help but smile. It's the kind of place where girls of all stripes flock to the city to pick up a richer man. James had an involuntary outburst. Mom, you're judging yourself, aren't you? If my memory serves me correctly, you're from the same provincial town. You came to this town about 30 years ago. Nina's eyes became unnaturally large. She turned pale and started gulping for air. James was scared out of his wits. He waved his handkerchief vigorously in front of the woman's face. Mammy, what's wrong with you? You can't take innocent jokes so keenly. The pale on her face was replaced by paint, and the mother pronounced clearly in syllables, "Don't you dare. Don't you dare ever speak to me in such a swaggering tone again. And don't compare me to that girl. Daddy and I had true love. It's the kind of love you write about in novels. And your Lisa's got a look on her face that says she's got a low-down agenda." James could barely contain his irritation. Every day is a new discovery. I didn't realize you were a face. You know, Mom, I'm not a little boy to be told how to live my life anymore. And I really hope you and Dad learn to respect my decisions. Nina threw her son another scornful look. Respect must be earned, not demanded. The woman tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge, and she shouted to James, "Let me out now." He silently got out of the car and walked around to the front. The door slid open smoothly, and Nina climbed out. James waited for his mother to gain a stable position and slowly pulled out of the parking lot. There was still hope in his soul that she would turn around and wave. Nina had a peculiar way of gesticulating. What do all professionals who work with hearing-impaired people do? James learned this sign language as a child and was very proud of this skill. His parents were always role models for him. But today, to his great regret, he realized that their kindness was played up, and sympathy for others was just a set of appropriate words. If also father was quite reserved, never boasted of his high status. Mother always tried to emphasize her belonging to the elite. James remembered the night he had decided to introduce Lisa to his parents without a second thought. Even 2 months after the event, he now felt a burning shame. Lisa became a part of his life very quietly. She did not whirlwind, as they write in books, and did not appear with a halo on her head in a cloud of a night dream. No, everything was banal beyond belief. James had just started his duties as head of the department and was trying to get used to the new place. He received a call from the receptionist at the main office in the morning. "James, to you literally from a minute to a minute should come a new employee to see her in the course of business. Get acquainted with the team, and please, gently with her. The girl is very shy." James promised that everything will be at the highest level. No sooner had he hung up the phone than a timid knock sounded. He quickly assumed a superior appearance. Enter the small office, squeezed sideways, a person of about 30 years old in a very modest outfit. "Remember your promise." A young man jumped out from behind the desk and began to park himself in front of the female visitor. "Don't be shy. Come in and make yourself at home. We have a great team, and I am sure that you will make the best friends here." He said a dozen more phrases, not letting the visitor open her mouth. Then he gently took the woman under his elbow and led her to the door. "And now, I'll show you your workplace. We have the most modern computers and a reliable data protection system." All the employees of the department watched this scene with interest, when suddenly the aunt released her hand and asked very loudly, "Why do I need your computers? I can't even touch them. When I worked in another company, they were also full of such machines. I was warned not to go within 2 meters of them." There was a much talked about silence. The aunt was the first to break the pause. She looked pleadingly at James. "You'd better show me. Where are your toilets under the sotka?" "I'll get right to work." Only after the woman asked about the toilets, James realized that she was getting a job as a janitor. The members of the department were holding their bellies, and he didn't know where to go out of embarrassment. It was the first time he had ever been in such a ridiculous situation, and for a few minutes his anger boiled up in him. He even wanted to call the chief's secretary and tell her what he thought. But he had to finish the job with the new cleaning lady first. He showed the woman to the back rooms and returned to his office. No sooner had James sat down at his desk than there was another knock on the door. A girl resembling a schoolgirl appeared on the threshold. She politely ducked for some reason. "Hello, I'm here to see you at work." His brain boiled with indignation, and he thought another prank. Isn't that a lot for one day? The visitor continued to smile, and he too stretched his lips and said with a sneer, "For today, the limit of cleaners is exhausted. Come back when a spot becomes available." The girl looked at him with bewilderment. "Didn't you get a call?" He chuckled stupidly, but he had been called. "Well, I'm here." James felt an incredible excitement and was carried away. "Very good. I'm going to show you where the restroom is. And then I'll take you to the pantry where we keep the buckets and rags." He appeared before the girl, and she looked at him with astonished eyes. Then, in a suddenly firm voice, she asked, "Are you all right?" This question had the effect of a ringing slap, and James instantly regained his psychological equilibrium. "Why do I look so much like a freak?" The girl answered very calmly. "Your eyes are running like a crazy person. And in general, you're talking such nonsense." "Thank you. You brought me to my senses." Thinking back on that encounter, James was struck by how calm William was. She didn't frighten or cry with surprising equanimity. She waited for the denouement. At first, their relationship violence is purely official in nature. Only 2 months later, they found themselves in the same cafe during a lunch break. James managed to be the first to take a table and was enjoying his coffee when he noticed William. The girl was looking for an empty seat, and he waved to her. "William, you can land next to me." She thanked him politely, and he too, for the sake of decorum, asked, "Do you want me to wait? How would you like it?" 2 days later, he invited her to a cafe, and she accepted his invitation. This period was short-lived and was replaced by short walks after work. And then James invited her to a concert of a popular band. After the amazing event, they walked around the city until night and shared their impressions. James himself felt the need to move on to the next stage of the relationship. During their lunch break, which they traditionally spent in a cafe, he asked William, "How do you feel about dating?" She gave him a charming smile. "Positive. I think there is something mysterious in such meetings, besides romance, and I love anything with a spirit of secrecy. Yes, you should have studied economics, writing, or screenwriting." "Well, one doesn't preclude the other. I get my passion for everything from my father. He's like my mom says, not of this world. He's a creative man who likes to fantasize. You intrigue me, and I'd like to meet your father. I like unconventional people." "What do your parents do?" "My mom's a speech pathologist. She helps children and adults with speech problems. My father has recently been appointed rector of a very prestigious institute." The girl looked at James with respect. "You? And I have parents from simple peasants. My mother worked on the farm all her life, and my father delivered mail." James never paid much attention to the social status of his friends and acquaintances, so the information about Lisa's parents had slipped past his mind. He remembered it only when he decided to invite her to visit him. Of course, he had talked to her parents beforehand. Before the weekend, he showed up at their house late at night. The door was opened by his father. "Mother, our son showed up. Go meet him." Nina ran out into the hallway. She was wearing a robe, and all her face except her eyes was covered with a green mass. "James, you were unannounced as usual and caught your mom looking so inappropriate." "It's okay, Mom. I'm used to it, and it's beautiful. That's the most important thing to any woman. I'm glad you understand. Your father's been so unbearable lately, nagging me all the time." David smirked. "It's just boredom. We've been together for so many years that we're bored with each other." The man paused, winking slyly at his son. "I wish you'd gotten married. Otherwise, my mother and I will never have grandchildren." James also winked at his father. Perhaps your wish will soon come true. I think I've met the girl I wish to always have by my parents' side. How would you like to meet her?" David was genuinely excited. It was felt both by his lively conversation and his mood. But Nina was wary of the news and spent the whole evening asking her son and his girlfriend. There was an important visit the following weekend, and James immediately realized that William did not like his mother. The guest also sensed the hostess's dislike, and the whole evening was very stilted. When it was time to serve tea, Nina called her son James. "Help me, I can't do it alone." The young man went into the kitchen and immediately came under fire of criticism. Nina whispered so loudly that he shut the door tighter. "My son, who have you brought into our house? Are you really going to tie your life to this wire?" "Mom, we haven't decided anything yet. We're just dating. But I'm not gonna lie to you. I like Lisa a lot. She's an extraordinary girl. They're all extraordinary at first, and then they become bitches and divide the property." "Mom, why do you have to tar a man with tar?" "I'm just trying to open your eyes, son. Take a closer look at your Lisa. Think about it. If you still value our opinion, I can tell you that this girl is no match for you." James didn't want to spoil the mood, and after a boring tea party, he left his parents' house with Lisa. The girl was sad and silent the whole way, only in front of the hostel where she was temporarily staying. She said wistfully to James, "You should have organized this meeting for nothing. Your parents didn't like me. I don't know about your father. Your mom is definitely turning against me. Don't fill your head with bad thoughts. My mother is a difficult person. Just ignore her." Soon they applied to the registry office, but they did not inform their parents about this step. For a long time in James's head, obsessive thoughts were spinning the word combination of unequal marriage thrown by his mother. But after the last conversation with his mother, he realized that it was time to draw the line and notify his parents of his decision. His father called the next day. "James, we need to meet and talk. Mom was really mad last night, and I want to know what you said to her." James had been waiting for this call and had time to prepare for it mentally. He calmly replied, "It's more like she told me, and a whole cartload more." There was metal in David's voice. "Son, but you know that your mother is worried about you. You're the only one we have. That's why we're so worried. Dad, you and Mom are missing one important detail. I'm 26 years old. Okay, let's really talk about this when we meet. Okay, I'll meet you at 6 o'clock in the city park. Our spot." As a child, James often spent time with his father in the recreation park. It was a favorite spot for the townspeople, and it was always crowded on weekends. David was an avid hunter and loved to demonstrate his marksmanship at the shooting range. He also patiently taught his son how to hit a 10-pointer. These memories put on sad thoughts. But why do all the best things happen in childhood? But it is only when a person grows up, as this notorious gap of misunderstanding between the closest people arises. With this question, he turned to his father. "We waited for him near the shooting range." David was surprised. "You decided to start with the main thing right away. Well done. And I spent the whole day thinking how to get to a delicate subject. Dad, it seems to me that our conversation has no sense at all, because Lisa and I have already decided everything." The elder James furrowed his brow. "You mean like decided?" "Yeah, we're usually adults and haven't needed parental guidance for a long time. Anyway, we've already applied, and in 3 months you'll sign." David plunged into thought. James waited patiently, and he really wanted to draw a line at this stage of his life. He understood that his parents sincerely wished him happiness, but they had a very different understanding of happiness. As if reading his thoughts, his father said, "Of course, your mother, and I didn't think this would happen." "That's right, Dad, but can you script out even one single life? I don't think these things are negotiable, because only 2 people should decide their own destiny. And Lisa and I have already made our choice. Do you like it or not?" David patted his son on the shoulder. "Come on, don't get emotional. I promised to talk to my mother today." They talked some more about small things and said goodbye. The next day, Nina showed up at the office. She strode down the hall with a confident gait, and admiring glances followed her. When James saw his mother, he was numb with surprise. Nina was pleased with the effect. "James, Dad, and I had a talk yesterday, and here I am. Take me to your Lisa. I'd really like to talk to her for a while." James looked suspiciously at his mother, but she reassured him. "Don't worry. I won't say anything unnecessary. It's just a matter of getting on with things." He showed his mother where Lisa worked and left the women alone. Nina came back again half an hour later. She is a nice girl and smart. James was very worried, although he tried to hide it. His mother touched his arm affectionately. "James, I'm not your enemy. Don't worry. We just talked a little, and I even liked the girl. By the way, I invited her parents to visit. I think that's the right thing to do, because we need to think together about where to have your wedding. Mom, Lisa and I wanted to keep it quiet. It doesn't matter what you wanted. Our opinions matter too. You know your fiancé's father is a great accordion player. He plays at his weddings over there." "Yes, Lisa told me." Nina looked lovingly at her son again and sighed. "Maybe you two can work something out." "Well, I'll leave you to it. I suggest you go to the village yourself." James was surprised. "Why would I go there? What kind of stupid question is that? Will you bring your relatives in your car?" "Mom, William's parents have their own car, and even her mother drives the car well." This news startled the woman, and she puckered her lips at his obnoxious smirk. James had unmistakably guessed her mood. "Mother, did you really think the countryside was home to beggars and wretches who ate cucumbers and potatoes and slept in haylofts? I think it's time for you to visit your relatives. Don't you feel drawn back to your native land?" "No, I don't. I'll tell you more. My childhood memories are not exactly pleasant, but I don't want you to know my little secrets. Let things remain as they are." She looked at him again with that unique look that only a mother can give. William had confessed to her mother just before she left that she was getting married. She had chosen a very unfortunate moment to do so, for Wendy was again busy with riddles. She couldn't hold the jar, and it fell to the floor. Brine splashed across the surface of the active foot of the hostess. "Daughter, it's a joke." Lisa grabbed a rag. "Mom, why are you like this? How should I behave? Tell me, how should I behave after what you said? You're not ready for married life." William has also joined the emergency response. "Wendy, think of yourself. You didn't prepare for marriage from the cradle, and you've survived and learned everything. And so will our daughter. She's a smart girl." Wendy was silent for a moment to gather her thoughts, then threw a light shawl over her shoulders. "I'm going to my grandmother's to talk to her." William was surprised, but decided it was better to keep silent. When his wife came out, he winked at his daughter. "Well, gentlemen of the jury, I think the ice is breaking. Maybe my lovely women will come to an amicable settlement." The man was right. In the fall, for the first time in 22 long years, she greeted her daughter-in-law cordially by a different kind of Wendy. She guessed she already knew everything. Passable, good, don't worry about it. That's how everybody gets married. You and I need to think about what we're getting for the wedding. Wendy exhaled. "Oh, Molly, believe me, I'm not thinking about presents right now. I'm thinking about how she'll be alone without us there. Yeah, she'll be fine. She went to college, and nothing's missing from her husband's life. If this James is as she described him, you don't have to be so dismissive about the gift. I've already got an idea." The mother-in-law summarized her idea, and the daughter-in-law was shocked again. "Do you think it will work?" I said sure it would. I've already found out everything, and even found a good lawyer. But that's how much money we'll have to throw away. The old woman waved her hand carelessly. "Why should I take these papers with me to the next world? At least it would be good for her only granddaughter." Lisa knew nothing about the negotiations between the relatives. After a week's vacation, she came back to the city, and on the first day, she was visited by her future mother-in-law Nina. She was not the same as when she visited, and Lisa even liked her. The girl was even more pleased when James, and that his parents were expecting her relatives. Lisa, you probably know that in the olden days, there was such a tradition. The girl interrupted the young man. If you are referring to the courtship, then in the villages this custom is still observed. Only the groom's relatives come to the bride. We're gonna do the opposite. I don't mind being the object of everyone's attention for one evening. The joke turned out well, and they laughed at it together in a merry excitement. The future newlyweds imagined how the party would go, but they did not expect the turn the event would actually take. The whole Medvedev family at the appointed time appeared by car to the house where the professor's couple lived. James's parents tried to show their cordiality and hospitality. David succeeded quite well. Nina's smile and words lacked sincerity. William whispered to his wife, "If we were to evaluate according to Stanislavski, I would now loudly say I do not believe." The man did not calculate the possibilities of his voice. And this phrase really sounded loud. The smile fell off Nina's face. "Did you say something?" "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you." William quickly realized what to say. "Yes, I wanted to say that I don't believe those who say that life is so much better in the city. We've only been here a few hours and already we're dizzy from the noise. And your air isn't as clean as ours in the country. You probably can't find any food in the store that isn't full of crap." The James spouses looked at each other uncomprehendingly. Nina indignantly said, "I, too, lived in a small town, and my grandmother even kept a cow at the wall." Molly cheerfully picked up on that. "And I still do to this day. The cow feeds us and allows for some luxuries." The mask of decency instantly flew off the face of the hostess. "What are you talking about? What luxuries in the countryside? There are no proper stores there. I'm not even talking about a beauty parlor or a hairdresser's. Of course, I realize that every waiter has to praise his swamp, but you don't even have a normal wedding." The guests were silent and averted their eyes. Only on the wall Molly fixed her gaze on the groom's mother. "Why are you so bad about the village? You think you were bitten to death by mosquitoes there. Believe me, we're no slouch over there, either. And we have our holidays the way they should be celebrated. Tell me, what are you going to give your children for the wedding?" James and I exchanged glances again. This time it was the professor himself who answered. "We decided to give them a fairy tale. That is, an unforgettable trip to the end of the world," and Nina's lips curled. "You probably haven't heard of such a place as the Maldives." Molly accepted the challenge. "You don't think we're that stupid? Have we heard of these islands? Have we seen it on TV? But I do not understand. Why should they go there if we can relax on the river? It's just a waste of money. My daughter-in-law and my son, and I decided to give them a company." Kelly expected anything but silence. The would-be matchmakers looked at her, trying to contain their laughter. Not Nina. She couldn't hold it in first and laughed at bay. "Grandma, what firm? Where did you get that kind of money?" Kelly threw aside conventionality. "You're not laughing. I'm not kidding, am I? I'm actually buying a firm that's bankrupt. I've got the accounts, I've got everything. Just in time for the wedding. Let the kids do what they want, and I'll be an investor for a while. That is, I'll invest the rest of the money in them." There was silence at the table again. Only Nina's smile disappeared from her face. "I don't get it, even if it's not a joke." "As you say, bursting into tears." Molly smirked. "What's the fancy word for it? Come on, granddaughter, help me out." When all sorts of tests are conducted, Lisa as frightenedly prompted a quest exactly the same. "Let's see how our newlyweds, whom we have taught for so many years, will pass this quest." "Well, and we will always help advice." Nina looked at her husband confused. Everything had not gone according to the plan she had made. After the words about the Maldives, the newly married relatives had to get embarrassed, to start thinking about what it was. And when would they realize that they weren't in the clear? Now the Riddle woman clearly felt as if they were the ones who were out of place. William looked at the satisfied grandmother and mother with equal surprise. James, too, flapped his eyes in silence, but his mind was already full of grandiose plans. He was confident in both his own abilities and those of his future wife. William was the most confused of all. He did not understand at all what the conversation was about. Besides, he was terribly offended that he had not been consulted. All right, Wendy, he was used to her not thinking of him as a human being. But Mom, how could she sleep with his wife? In general, William was even scared. Of course, he always said that he suffered from the fact that Molly and Wendy do not get along. But now, if they become good at communicating, it is likely to be so. His William's quiet life would come to an end. David, the rolling lasted, and everyone turned to him as if he was the only one who could say the right thing right now. I'm thinking, Nina, as we're still in the middle of buying a trip, maybe it's more rational to just give the kids the money. Let them invest it in their own business. Something tells me that with a grandmother like that, all doors will be open to them, and everything will work out. Nina, she looked at her husband as if he were a traitor, then silently got up from the table and left. James followed her about 10 minutes later. At her, Nana refused to come out, told him to pass on her apologies because she suddenly had a terrible migraine. Wendy got up. We should get going too. David got up from the table. Where are you going? It's almost night, and you still have miles to go. Wendy smiled. She caught it, and when she woke up, she answered him. But we are not on the edge of the world, and we live only a couple of hours, and we are already home. Besides, you forget that we are not city dwellers, and we have a household at home. David looked at the future wedding party with surprise. Oh, she knows how to discreetly send to the defendant too. But see for yourself. By the way, we never really talked about the wedding. William was in the hallway reprimanding his father because he's inconspicuous, and it's not clear how he got his hands on it. James helped support him. Wendy looked at her host with a smile. Well, now it's your turn to come to us, and make sure you stay overnight. You need to see how clean the air is in the evening in our area. David now realized that William, that her mother, they didn't open up right away. She seemed like an ordinary, modest woman from the countryside. But it's a pleasure to talk to her. She pronounced the words correctly, and there was no hint of any rustic intonation. He suddenly became terribly curious to see how the future matchmakers lived. He remembered, of course, that today they had the task of embarrassing Lisa's parents and upsetting the wedding. But now he realized that there would be a wedding, even if they forbade it on pain of death. As the guests left the room, Nina came out. What are we going to do? David at first wanted to answer with harshness, but then he thought that as his wife he was also going to do everything to upset this wedding. So he went up to his wife, hugged her, and you and I will be going to visit our future in-laws. Because of your migraine, we never got to discuss the wedding. But David, that's it, Nina. Let's just get over it. Try to accept the situation. By the way, the more I talk to Lisa, the more I like her. You know, she's got some kind of inner chord, you know. She looks like a dandelion girl, a shepherdess. Dig a little further. No, you should definitely just get to know her better. And then all our assumptions, as you can see, didn't pan out. I don't think Lisa is at all interested in our untold riches either. The last words were said in such a pompously theatrical tone that Nina couldn't stand it, and through the wrong career David, James tried not to get in front of his parents. First of all, he was still a little shocked by Lisa's gift from the family. And secondly, he knew how hard it was to lose, or rather, to accept losing. And his mom had definitely lost. He'd just wait until things settled down. Tonight, he and Lisa were to meet the firm that Lisa's grandmother had mentioned. Of course, its sale was not a quick matter, but the owner, who was very anxious to get rid of it, had kindly offered them a familiarization tour. The feeling was very unusual. They go together to see their future business. The mother called 4 days later. "Hello, son." James cautiously answered, not expecting anything good. "Hello, Mom. Why did you disappear?" "No, I haven't disappeared. A lot of work." And the firm was getting acquainted. He almost bit his tongue off. But why does he tell his mother that? She wouldn't be happy for him anyway. James was sure of it. Well, you tell your father, you know, I'm not good at financial matters. Dad's the head here, and I'm more of a spendthrift. That's not what I'm talking about. We didn't agree on the wedding. Well, if you be so kind as to call. Let her find out when it's convenient for us to come. But I can't just say I accept your faith. But I'll try. James hung up the phone, wanted to dial Lisa's number. Then he waved goodbye and went to her. When he told her about his mother's call, he grinned suddenly. You know, it's so unusual for Lisa to feel that her mother won't be giving us a hard time anymore. William smiled. Well, she's understandable. You're her only son. It's understandable that she'd hate to let you go. James looked at his fiancée with admiration. You know, you're amazing. I mean, you know perfectly well that your mom was against you, and now you're defending her. Lisa shrugged. It's enough to put yourself in her shoes. What do you think? My mom cried tears of delight when I informed her I was getting married. They laughed. God, what kind of punishment am I in for? William, why are you lying down? It's going to get mossy. William pretended to be sound asleep, and you give him a kernel on the forehead or a bucket of cold water. The man opened his eyes abruptly. Somehow he had missed the moment when his mother came to them. He must have dozed off. Well, since Molly's here in the fall, there's no resting. This Wendy was all more words, and his mother had never been shy about means to an end. He sat down on the bed. What are you clucking like chickens? I have to build a terrace so that you can gather there and not disturb my rest. There's no family time. And by the way, I went to bed after 2 o'clock. Wendy turned to him immediately. What do you think? If I hide the TV from you at night, will you go to bed on time? William ate and got along. What can she do? She'll just hide it. Women are out of control. He looked at his mother, then at Wendy. They both looked at him with the same expression. William thought to himself, this is it. The worst that could ever come has arrived. They laughed. So my song is over. But no, we'll fight on. What's this early morning meeting? Wendy put her hands to her sides before she started to tell him off. When you were watching your soccer game last night, did you notice anything else? William stared at her uncomprehendingly. I was watching soccer, but I was hiding beer under the chair. What's soccer without beer? What could have happened last night? A star fell from the sky, and I'm gonna fall on you, and you're gonna have a star burning between your eyes on the wall. Molly nodded her head in agreement, and I might add, William was starting to freak out. Why can't you two, like crazy people, say something normal? Wendy even pushed with her foot. I told you yesterday I came up to you twice, and you didn't even notice me. William wrinkled his forehead. That was exactly right. He only remembered that he thought she was trying to take the beer away from him, so he pretended that such a tense moment in soccer. William, James's parents are coming over this weekend, and he's, you know. William rubbed his hands together. He really liked the holidays. First of all, it's fun. Second of all the good stuff Wendy cooks that you can eat for a week. You can eat for a week. Third, of course, there'd be the booze he'd always been forbidden. And fourthly, when there are guests, when there's no one bothering him, he can legally do nothing. That is, he and so, of course, especially will not break a leg, but in the holiday it can be done quite officially. But as it turned out, Molly is not the only one who has an expert on nutritional thoughts. Wendy immediately said, if you think that you will lie quietly on the couch to wait for guests, you are deeply mistaken. Now you have breakfast, and you're going to finally finish the terrace, and then clean up the yard. You're going to make the place look nice. William even laughed. Well, you've got a terrace to build and build. What can I do there in 3 days? Molly intervened. Don't worry, son, I'll help you. Where with a word, and where with a stick along the spine. William stopped smiling. You can't be serious, can you? Wendy nodded. I couldn't be more serious. You have exactly 2 hours to tell me what you're missing. I'll go and get some, and I have to go to work. William looked from one to the other and realized they weren't joking at all. In fact, to be honest, he wasn't going to finish this terrace this year. It's a long time coming. You have to think about it. You have to think about it. You have to take your time. Now what? William began to dress in silence. He was thinking hard about what he could think of to say that it was impossible. But then his mother said something that made him drop his shirt. "Oh, Wendy, I don't know what you see in him. Skinny and not much of a man. Lazy as I don't know what. Well, that's all right. We'll have to re-educate him. Better late than never." William now clearly realized that he had no choice. In the past, you could run from Wendy to your mother, complain, to hear that it was the pebbles that drove him to the end. Now there was no one to complain to, nowhere to hide. Nana paced nervously around the apartment. "David, but why do we have to stay overnight? There are obviously no facilities there. And in general, Nina did not inflame before time. First of all, they didn't look ancient to me, so I wouldn't say it's bad. Secondly," he hesitated, and his wife looked at him in surprise. "You see, Nina, all work is running around. If he rests, then Maldives, because the position obliges. Just recently I realized that I would sit on the beach with a fishing rod and even beat mosquitoes with pleasure." Nina involuntarily smiled, imagining this picture. Well, it would probably be much better without mosquitoes. "David, only let you promise me that if there's a cabin there, we'll go back home in the evening." "Okay." David trumps. "Yes, my general." And Nina sighed. They'd been married for so many years. In public, they're always serious and collected. But at home, when not seen, even their son David could fool around. And then, as if in an instant, the years passed away. And it became so easy, so joyful. And then a little sad, because you begin to realize that a lot of things will never happen again. Let's think again about what we should take with us. David looked at the 2 huge bags that stood in the middle of the room. "I didn't realize how long we're going for." "Not Nina. Are you inoculated?" "What is it?" "Nothing extra blankets, bed medicine, warm clothes, light clothing." She would have gone on and on with the list. But David put his hands up. "Stop. That's not how it works. Imagine if someone came to visit you with all that stuff. You'd probably be offended. So what do you suggest? We'll travel light." "Sure. Well, we'll stop by, get something. A delicatessen cake." Nina sighed, then just stepped over the bags. "But then let's go. I'll sort it all out later." David looked at his wife carefully. Nina was just obsessed with cleanliness and order, and to leave the bags in the middle of the apartment and drive away. Apparently she was in two-shot feelings. He put his arm around her. "Well, look at me." Nina obediently looked up. "Do you want our son to be happy?" She nodded. "But I'm not preventing him from that. Just help." James picked them up when they were already out in the yard. "Oh, I'm surprised I don't have to force you into the car." David helped his wife into the car, then sat down himself and didn't drive. "I don't trust you." James immediately took offense. "Then you should have driven your own car." "I trust you." David, embarrassed by the purse. "Well, no offense, I said it without thinking. My mother and I are a little nervous." James sighed. "I'm nervous too. The first meeting didn't go well. But we'll see how the second one goes." James had a cell phone. It was on a stand that rested on a panel. Lisa was calling, and it was a video call. He had no choice but to take the call. David immediately turned the phone towards him. "Hello, William." "James, you drive. You talk. He can hear you." William was confused. Then she looked at her future father-in-law. "Daddy wants to know how to make a sauna. Do you like to steam?" David felt a twinge in his cheekbones. He had only been in a bathhouse a couple of times and had never been able to do it again. He smiled. "Girls, I don't know if I'm in love or not, but I'm willing to try anything." William laughed, nodded her head, and said goodbye. Nana said, "David, be careful what you wish for. You're not a boy anymore." David replied, "Everything will be all right. You'll see." In an hour or an hour and a half, James' passengers fell asleep on the road. He said, "Well, if the navigator is right, we are almost there." David rubbed his eyes and looked around. They were driving through a fairly large and also very modern village. There's nothing to it. What was his mother so afraid of? James looked tensely at the houses and finally smiled. "There's William's house. Waiting for us, Nina," and scrutinizing the house. "Yeah, it might even be a good place to sleep. Who knows? Maybe there's even water in the house." There was water and a toilet in the house. Of course, I didn't immediately praise William, and he was modestly silent that as soon as it was time to deal with the sewage, he immediately switched to some illnesses as serious as migraine and colic. Wendy had to hire laborers. That's how they built the whole place. The guests don't need to know that at all. And here we have the terrace. Have a seat. Now we'll have tea before the bath, and after the bath we'll sit down. William carefully hid behind his back, interrupting his fingers. Oh, how much I wanted to tell him how he was working like a mother, even if she wouldn't let him take a break for a while. But intercepting a glance in the wall, Molly only sighed. Nina was staring at the chair, around which Wendy and William were snooping. And this is called just having tea. In her mind, tea is a mug, tea and candy. And here it was all so unhealthy, but so appetizing. She silently watched as her husband, a respectable man who even at home ate only with the proper food utensils, with some sort of gleeful pleasure scooped a large bright wooden spoonful of sour cream, which for some reason did not run off the spoon, did not drip, but just stood lump on it and sent it into her mouth. David even squeezed his eyes shut with pleasure, and then, without opening his eyes, he said to Nina, "Do you think that what we eat, sour cream, it's nothing like that. Sour cream turns out to be completely different." Molly smiled approvingly that the future relative didn't seem to be as bad as she at first thought. She moved a plate of cottage cheese over to him. David aimed and scooped up an equally large mound. James and Lisa watched him with a smile. Nina. Jana frantically tried to calculate how many calories were in it all. Then it was time to try her own smoked meat, then Grandma Kelly's pies. After 10 minutes, Nina gave up. Everyone at the table was eating with such gusto that it was impossible to resist. She felt like she couldn't even move. Wendy invited her into the house. "Come on, Nina, I'll show you where you'll sleep. In fact, let the men rest without us." Molly went to the veranda to rest, and Lisa, Nina, and Wendy headed into the house. Nay found behind the lady of the house and realized that, strangely enough, she did not annoy her. Not forever, explained obese women. Even if they were only 2 pounds overweight, Wendy was well over 2 pounds. She wasn't fat, more like pudgy. Wendy's movements were swift. The house, as Nina had time to notice, was perfectly clean, which was very important to her. And she also realized that to imagine Wendy thin simply could not. "This is your room, and James's." "I style on the veranda." Nina raised her eyebrows in surprise. "A whole room?" "Well, of course, I don't want you to feel. You can rest if you want. It'll take a couple more hours." Nina did not rest, or rather, didn't let her husband David. He came into her room. "Nina, let's go for a walk to see the people. We'll go to the river." She wanted to refuse, but she saw such a plea in her husband's eyes that she just sighed. They hadn't gone 100 meters when an old man appeared in front of them, as if from under the ground. "Good health." Nana regarded him with amazement. He was a complete image of the old men from the fairy tales. David had a particularly happy smile. "Hello." Going further was out of the question. The old man was standing in such a way that he would have to be defiantly bypassed, and since he was not going to retreat, it's not all said. That means you have to be polite. "I can't admit it. Whose will you be?" "We, grandfather, are nobodies. We came to visit who?" The situation was getting ridiculous, but it was clear that it was better to answer, because this grandfather will not just leave. Were Wendy and William more important than matchmakers? Well, you could say that. The old man thought for a while. Yeah, you're lucky to have Wendy. She's a respected person. I suppose you could say indispensable. If anything happens, everyone goes to her. And they know that if anyone can save a Tony, it's Wendy. Her mother-in-law is a real bitch. But what's there to say about her? Molly is Molly. The old man disappeared as suddenly as he'd appeared. Nina even helped with her eyes. And then she asked, "What was that?" David, rubbing his hands together happily, answered it was Nina. Local color. Let's hurry up and see the river ahead. He grabbed his arm and almost sideways dragged him towards the river. Nina praised herself for her foresight. She had time to change into high-heeled shoes and simple slippers and rushed after her husband. Again, she remembered those years when she and Dima had just met. He would grab her by the hand and drag her somewhere where, in his opinion, she should be very interesting. When Nina was distracted by the beauty of the river for a moment, her husband disappeared. She looked back and saw him having a serious conversation with a boy of about 7 who was sitting with a fishing rod. Then David stood up, shook his hand, and returned to her. Nina remained silent. She knew for sure that he wouldn't stand for it, and for sure he would. Not 5 minutes later, David was talking fast. "You won't believe it, but the children in the village are so mature. Will be waiting for me tomorrow at 6:00 a.m. and will even bring me a fishing rod." No way. Look, David, we're not playing too hard to get. David, be serious. You know, the more I'm here, the more I realize we're playing in the city. Here in this place, you can just be yourself. Nina sighed. Her husband was right about something. She understood that, but she didn't want to accept it. Nina had spent so long building it all up. Their whole world, or a fiction. Was the bath a huge shock for Nina? No, of course. She'd been to saunas and all the fancy bathhouses. They were sitting on the terrace. And William, who had already taken on chest, waving his fingers with pathos, said, "No, you just look around, what beauty, what latitude." Wendy smiled affectionately at him. "Father, you'd better get an accordion instead of ranting. Play us something for our souls." He looked at his hands doubtfully, but then waved his hand. A real master of his craft, a hammered finger is no obstacle at all. Nina sat pressed against her husband, and David even covered his eyes to listen to the melody. As bad as William's economic acumen was, he was certainly a musician of God. When the melody subsided, Nina suddenly said, "You know, I owe you an apology for both my behavior and my thoughts not being as good as I am right now. It's been a long time since you've had one. There's such a calmness here, as if it were the only right place in the world. I confess I thought the girl from the village was no match for my son at all. But now I think we're very lucky for him too." Wendy smiled, and Molly said, "Don't worry, Nina. I came here about 50 years ago, and I couldn't get over the fact that it's nice here, and the people are nice. I called the whole village a fancy word then. So now I wear that word as a nickname. All my life." David stood up, and I had a great idea. William immediately grabbed the bottle, for the idea needs a drink. Wendy gave him a stern look, and William immediately snickered. "Wendy, what are you doing?" "It's for the idea." William laughed after her. "James, it's like they've been forgotten about." They were watching their parents with pleasure from their corner. Their laughter was picked up by their grandmother, and then by everyone. And David continued, "So we're all here today because of the children. But there is such an atmosphere here that you don't want to think about anything serious. And here's my idea. But please note, it's just an idea. If the young people don't like it, we'll forget about it." He was silent for a moment, as if choosing words. "Pretty soon our children will be a family, thanks to their grandmother. But they'll have plenty for their parents to do, too, of course. So we won't see them very often. And if we can catch them in the city," Wendy sighed sadly. She had been thinking about it for days, and the future matchmaker went on. "And I think, let's at least have a wedding in the village. Here, such vastness, we will all bring Toastmaster waiters. You can't imagine how great it would be. Nina wanted to be indignant, but how could you even think of such a thing? And the guests, and the outfits, and the beauty parlors. How could her husband even imagine all this? But for some reason, the words wouldn't come. I was thinking of some kind of dashing, beautiful rustic fun. And it had to be outdoors. David eyed his wife warily, but she kept silent. Then he turned to Lisa and James. What do you say? James was also excited by the idea that we could have a party here that no one in the village had ever seen. Lisa looked at him in surprise. Wow, didn't you say you didn't want all those boring ceremonies? This is boring, and this is here. Zach hugged David. You don't understand. This is not a vacation. This is a super vacation. And what a family this is. It's amazing. And they both work for me. James said he's quitting. But I don't take offense. I understand that young people need to develop. James Lyra's boss had been drinking a lot, and now the whole world was trying to put him in the car that came for him. But it wasn't so easy. That's for a drink. That toast is good. That hug not everyone. But in the end, after the last passage, he had to be carried to the car. Colleagues David respected and serious people were not in the best condition. They all said the air here was special. It's like nowhere else. Such a wedding the village really has not seen for many years, and maybe never heard of at all. All the neighbors were there, everyone who had any contact with the Madrid family. How many more from the city? Only a year after the event, James and Lisa were already ahead of the curve with their first orders, and David recommended her to his friends. They didn't have kids around much anymore. It's understandable that they had so many. But Nina and David didn't worry much. There was no time for them. Every weekend, right after work, their car went clapping. As they traveled to their relatives, they stayed with them. But a little more, and the house they were building would be ready. A place to spend their old age, a place to rest from the noisy city. They chose, of course, Clappers. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Chapter 1. The year 2065 has proven to be rich in interesting scientific inventions for the general public. Young Dr. Michael Holliday is inspired by his invention today. Ethan, our invention is going to make us a fortune. I've already figured out how we're going to monetize it, said he inspirationally to his older colleague. Michael, you're still very young and promising. We should think 10 times before we publicize our achievements. We invent with good intentions. If our invention falls into the hands of unscrupulous people, it becomes dangerous. Don't rush into monetization, said a senior colleague. Ethan, how long can you and I stand on the sidelines of life, as if we are observers? It's time to dispel the myth that scientists are people who live in their own narrow world, that everything human is alien to us. You, for example, how long are you willing to put up with your wife's reproaches? While you are here thinking about good intentions and earns a lot of money, organizing leisure activities for rich companies, young and beautiful girls. You, of course, forgive me for my frankness on you, do not notice how long she has long put you in nothing. And all because of the fact that you have little money compared to her. You cannot at the right moment bang your fist on the table and put her in her place. It's time to end it, said Michael, inspired. No, Michael, I think of people first. Not then you and I are morally responsible for our inventions. If someone breaks their fate, how do we live with that? How do we look civilization in the eye? Ethan said, wiping his glasses. Ethan, you're a golden man, but you're not practical. It's up to you. I've offered my solution. If you don't want to reap the fruits of your labor, it's your decision. I think I'll take the risk of realizing my grandiose plan. Don't complain later that I didn't give you enough. A couple of hours later, Michael was already talking passionately about his invention and his wife. Unlike his old colleague, his wife Adriana, knowing Kim, accepted his idea to get rich with joy. Michael, can you at least tell me what invention is the reason why you can't make a deal with this man? She asked, when the couple was daydreaming about the near future. We invented a method that helps any person to change his appearance to that of any other person. For example, any person can come to us and in a couple of hours become indistinguishable copies of their favorite star, said Michael. Is it makeup? Grinned we all know. Kina is not makeup, it's last century. We use a high-tech material that is no different from human skin. It won't wash off, it won't burn, it won't freeze. Nothing will happen. Even if someone takes a fist to the face, their face doesn't lose its beauty and integrity. And it costs pennies, Michael said. If it costs pennies, how are you going to make a fortune out of it? Wouldn't it make sense to make it more expensive? Adriana asked. You have to think 3 steps ahead. Get a new look. There's more to it than that. But people don't need to know all the secrets at once. After all, what they want is for any of their problems to be solved quickly and without hassle, and preferably for a nickel. With this task, I think we have coped. There is another stage at which the money will flow to us by the river. You'll just see. Trust your genius, said Michael dreamily, leaned back in his chair. And you can make a face for me. Megan Fox would love to have a face like that, said Adriana. No, honey, I don't want you to use our invention. I haven't told you everything. And we won't tell our clients everything. You don't need to change your appearance. You're already my prettiest, said Michael Holliday, hugging his wife. No, I don't. It's not a matter of principle for me. For me, it's about you realizing your vision so that we can finally afford our dream home, so that we can take advantage of services and stay away from the masses, so that we get the best out of life. And then I'll find something to do and start my own business and earn money too, said Adriana know-it-all dreamily. But things were not so smooth in Ethan's family. His wife, the owner of the most popular escort agency in town, Betty, was not happy with her husband again today. I'm Benjamin all day long, and there's no one at home to take out the trash or water the flowers. She was outraged from the doorstep. Honey, I just got home from work too. Give me some time. I'll do everything, said Ethan, hurriedly putting his briefcase aside and pulling on an apron. I've given you the best years of my life. So what? I don't need you to do all the housework yourself. I just need to hire a proper domestic staff. You promised me that 3 years ago. Why don't you give up those inventions of yours? Those useless lab tests and come work for me? Betty asked her husband reproachfully. Betty, how can you imagine such a thing? Do you want me to quit science and go to work in your escort agency? Asked he with trembling hands, letting his glasses slip down his nose. What's the big deal? I've been in this business almost all my life myself from scratch, you could say. At first it took a long time to gain clients with our own hands and feet, and when the competition appeared, you went to a new level. I gathered young ladies and brought the service to a new level. You know, no shortage of customers, but managing staff is always a challenge. We need someone who knows how to get my girls out of unplanned situations. It's no big deal. But the money, the real money's out there. Ethan, said the wife, waving her hands in front of her husband. While the mother and father were arguing, their daughter Christina woke up. Don't you miss you for 7 days? Said she, hurriedly rolling her pink suitcase out into the hallway and dousing herself. Where is she going when she has a session coming up? Asked Ethan to his wife with surprise. The wife shrugged her shoulders. But folks, how much do you need to explain? A tourist guide's job is like that. I have to pay for the trips, I have to run a little more. I'll buy myself a sports car, and then I'll catch up on my studies. Or should I just leave it now? Will you buy me a car? Asked her daughter, putting aside her red stilettos. That's a question for your father. Dad, you explain to your daughter. Her peers are driving the best cars. Only yours is still driving a 5-year-old Porsche Cayenne. The wife turned the tables on her husband again. Ethan couldn't find anything to say but shook his head. Meanwhile, the daughter was already getting into the car of an elderly millionaire who had booked it from the evening and was waiting for her at the entrance. Chapter 2. Kathy, you would at least sneak into the room all day long lying, without taking her eyes off the phone, threateningly said the mother to her daughter. But to moms, it would quickly turn into a mess anyway. So what? Look at her shameless mess. She says so the point is to never be a mess. But you're a girl. Mother was indignant. That's right, I am a girl, Kathy said, and stared dreamily out the window. The mother looked at her daughter and noticed something suspicious. Okay, stop. Sit down, she said, and sat down on the edge of the bed. Are you in love? She asked. Why is it noticeable? Asked Kathy playfully. Actually, he's so cool at home. Look how cool he is, she said, and turned the phone to her mother. Clara saw on the screen pictures of a handsome guy in a brightly colored jacket. She started flipping through the pictures one by one. Here he is in the pool with a cocktail in his hands. Here he is riding over the country town on his flying car. And here he is surrounded by some girls. Kathy, but he's a bit of a slacker, Mother said. And that's because he can afford it. You read his last names, Kathy said, not hiding a blissful smile. Benjamin Chesterton. So what does that make him? Is this the son of the Chesterton everyone's talking about? The mother asked and rounded her eyes. Yes, the son of the most famous Chesterton, and the only heir in the family, and just a handsome guy. And yes, he's not only handsome, he's very vulnerable and touching. He and I have had a couple of private conversations, Kathy said. Didn't you ask him if he wants the daughter of a simple teacher and a simple construction worker? I wish you the best, of course, but you have to be realistic. They're not going to pair these things up in their own circles. The difference with ordinary people. It will be painful for you to realize it later, she said and sighed heavily. Mom, if a woman has a trump card in her hands, it doesn't matter what her background is or what her chosen one wants. I know how to win Benjamin for life, said Kathy, and stretched blissfully again. A spell. That's the kind of thing that can get you in trouble. We've been down that road before. Well, when we were young, of course. Maybe you should just focus on your studies. Are you gonna have a lot of boyfriends? And let's be realistic about what you can do. You're smart, but you're average looking. There's no need for illusions, said Clara. That's what I mean. I'm average looking, but technology is not standing still. This issue is easily solved. Since you've already learned the whole truth, I'll warn you in confidence. If I come home the other day dressed as famous singer neighbor Alba, please don't faint with your father. It's normal now. You go to a clinic, and in a day you're transformed into any star. Then you have all the cards in your hand. You go about your life with confident steps and conquer all heights. And even Benjamin Chesterton, Kathy said. What, are you the one who's going to change your looks or something? Do you know it's not healthy? Asked the mother. All this stuff about body transformations is made up by envious people. They want people to still torture themselves by going to gyms, beauticians, buying cosmetics, and everything else. It's all a huge amount of money and time. There's 1 million people involved in the process. It's their bread. And of course, they don't want to lose all their customers in one day. So they come up with this idea that there's going to be a transformation. It's something terrible. There's nothing really wrong with it, Kathy said. War. I don't like the idea anyway. Father won't be happy about it, that's for sure. And how do we feel? Raised our own girl, and then now that she's different, it'll be hard to adjust. My friend's son already did that. He took on the appearance of some athlete. He immediately lost his temper, abandoned all his interests, only and hangs out with different girls. He's not interested in school or work, said Clara. Mom, you and your father said that study and work are necessary for a person to live well. And if a person has already learned to live well, why all this fuss? It's time for you older generation to learn to look at life in a simpler way, Kathy said. Clara couldn't find anything to object to her daughter. She only reflected on the mores of youth and began to move around in her daughter's room. When her daughter left on the nearest day off ostensibly for her own business, and then returned in the guise of a famous historical singer, The detectives could have. The mother almost fainted. So you weren't kidding. Did you really do it? The mother was horrified. What's wrong? See, now instead of a crooked nose, I have a perfect eye. Look at those eyes. How can you resist them? And those lips. And I can't stop looking in the mirror, said the delighted daughter, looking at her new face in the mirror and admiring it. Why would you do that? You have to get reacquainted with everyone. I don't understand our times, said Clara in bewilderment. That's the whole point. It'll be a surprise for everyone, especially Benjamin. He's a fan of the singer. Does your Benjamin know that it's Ceci Kamal Bey now a little more than his father? She's from our youth. She must be about 80 years old at least. That was made up by her haters. She just turned 23. She said so herself. And the one from your youth is that her historical double, said Kathy. How much does a treat like that cost? Where did you even get the money? Mother finally found it. What's it worth? No more than my lunch at the university. Yes, that's how much Dr. Michael Holliday recently invented this method. The clinic just opened recently. There's a promotion where they give everyone their dream look for a token dream, said Kathy. I still don't like the idea. Don't forget to introduce yourself to your father, or he'll think something, said Clara, still worried about her daughter's dramatic transformation. Chapter 3. The freshmen had already had time to get acquainted with each other and to mark their interest groups. But everyone was surprised by the son of the oligarchs Chesterton. Having such money, why didn't he go to study somewhere in Moscow, for example, or in St. Petersburg? They asked him on the first day. Probably he had done something wrong in front of his father, and they wouldn't let him go anywhere, grinned another student. Cities and distances are not a problem at all. In my case, there are things to do here. I need to be with my father for a while. Help him with his business problems, said Benjamin, briefly, but the bespectacled man's version of the guilt trip to Batya really hit him. It was true. Benjamin was already in trouble with the law, so his parents kept him around until he turned 25, or until he found a good, reliable girl to be his life partner. But Benjamin didn't plan to tie his life to anyone yet, so he remained indifferent to the female members of the group. For several days now, one bright girl didn't like it very much. She is used to the fact that in any place men's eyes are fixed on her, and they first of all try to make conversation with her. And she herself is pretty good at building rapport with them. She decided to make the first move on an attractive object like Benjamin Chesterton. Hi, aren't you bored here? Christina asked Benjamin. Hi, where can I go? Knowledge is power. It's like my dad says, you have to study science. Are you bored here? I'm free after class today. If you want, we can drive around the city or walk over it. What do you say to that? Asked Christina playfully. No, I don't feel like it. I'd rather go to my friends. It's more fun with them, said Benjamin. What kind of friends will you take me with? Asked Christina, not wanting to give up. But since you want so much, maybe I will. They're interesting guys. One of them is a music producer. There are rising stars, athletes, and all, Benjamin said. Christina's eyes lit up. She had long dreamed of reaching a new level in her social circle. Now she decided not to miss this chance. Who is your closest friend that you can tell everything to? Christina asked. I haven't met such a friend yet. Or maybe it will be a friend. I don't know yet, said Benjamin, trying to get rid of the intrusive interlocutor. So you don't have a friend yet? Can I say it's a vacancy? Christina asked playfully. Well, you could say that. I'm waiting for my ideal. You know who I like. The ideal of female beauty I consider the singer Sosaka Malibu, dreamily said Benjamin. Christina grinned. Why do you need that old lady? She just looks our age. In fact, she's almost 150 years old. My mom used to tell me she was popular in their youth. It's just the Cheese King's success, Christina said. I don't care if she's 370. It doesn't matter. She just has very beautiful and bottomless eyes. When you look into those eyes, you forget about everything in the world. But that's the kind of friend I'd like to have around me. At least I can dream about it. It's not forbidden. Christina was glad that she had managed to get acquainted with her new classmate and to establish at least some connection with him. Now she was eagerly waiting for the lecture to end so she could go with him to his usual circle of friends. Kathy skipped class that day. Instead of university, she headed to the mall in search of clothes. She ran from one boutique to another, trying to find something that more or less fit. The singer's outfits could surprise her lover, then she should do it extravagantly, she decided. Let it be just in time for him to miss her tonight. Maybe he'd still care. And tomorrow she would appear in front of him and his dream come true. At the party among Benjamin's friends, Christina behaved in a relaxed manner. She had watched from childhood how her mother knew how to guess men's whims and train girls to get their way. At home, she would tell her daughter, "You need to become an important specialist and not to have to watch men's hands and depend on their moods. This kind of bread, though it may taste good, is not good for you." Christina strove to live up to her mother's expectations, but some other force led her in a different direction. In her early teens, she was already close enough to fellow students. They had friends who were already working. They were generous, if a girl gives her attention. So Christina was quietly drawn into her mother's line of work, only through another firm. There she was also advised that she could cleverly cipher her occupation, moonlighting as a tourist guide. The mother was pleased that the daughter was taking the different path. The daughter was pleased that she was now independent of her parents and was making decent money on her own. So it was not difficult for her to unravel Benjamin and make him feel at ease. At the same time, she managed to figure out the mood of his inner circle. Everybody's out. Our esteemed friend Benjamin is entering adulthood. He is now a student, and on this occasion, he must be introduced today. Well, Benjamin, we'll order champagne for everyone. One of his friends approached him. No, on the contrary, it is you who should congratulate him and give him a party. I understand Benjamin spoils everyone at every party. Christina answered for him. Before Benjamin becomes an adult, he's already got a collar around his neck. What's next? He's gonna get under his heel, ask his girlfriend for permission. Guys, we're losing our friend, said the friend, and the crowd erupted in laughter. Benjamin did not understand this move of Christina. He looked at her with bewilderment, but he lived and quickly stroked the situation. You can't tame the mice, it's good for them. If someone doesn't like it, he's just jealous of himself, inexperienced in life. Benjamin concluded that Christina is a sophisticated girl ready to stand up for him. From that moment on, he was in awe of her. For the rest of the evening, he did not leave her side. They sweetly and bravely put in place all friends who dared to say something to them. When it was time to go home, Christina asked Benjamin to walk her home. He put her in his flying car, and they drove through the night sky of the sleeping city. Benjamin, you're a magician. I'm so impressed with tonight. I guess I'd like to thank you for that gift, she said. When did you land at the girl's house? Come on, there's no need for anything, Benjamin said, embarrassed. But you didn't even ask what it was about. Maybe you can guess, said Christina playfully. Well, a kiss, I guess, said Benjamin, slightly embarrassed. No, my kisses are not a gift for you, but something to take for granted. You'll see my present one of these days. I probably won't make it the day after tomorrow, but the day after that I definitely will, Christina said. Lastly, and reproached from the automobile. Chapter 4. A couple of days later, Benjamin was stunned to see the heroine of his fantasies at the entrance to the building of his university. His feet carried him to meet her. Girl, I haven't seen you around here before, he said to me, averting his eyes from Kathy and her new appearance. Kathy almost fainted with happiness. Yeah, I've seen you a couple times before. My name's Kathy, by the way. Shall we get acquainted? She held out her hand. While Benjamin sang her praises, they went to the auditorium together. When he found out that the girl looks just like his favorite singer and is also his tomb, he was happy. So you are here. Let's sit together on the last desk. I don't know anything about this higher math, said Benjamin. I'm all for it, but don't worry. I always got straight A's in algebra for higher math. Pulled you through, said Kathy. Finished. The first couple got a call on Benjamin's cell phone. Benjamin, hi. I promised you a surprise. Well, it's ready. Just come out to the courtyard. I want you to see it first, said Christina in a happy voice. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna step out for a few minutes. My friend's name is there, by the way, also from our group. Her name is Christina, said Benjamin and hurried to meet her. Kathy felt a pang of jealousy in her heart for the first time, but she didn't realize that this was just the beginning. Meanwhile, Benjamin was stunned to see for the second time today a second girl who looked exactly like his favorite singer in the courtyard of the university. So that's over the top. How did you manage to transform so much? Asked. Let that be my little secret. We women have a lot of secrets. You don't need to know about them. Do you even like the way I look now? Christina asked. Yes, I like it a lot. But there's one thing. There's another girl from our group who looks just like you. So it's like you're one egg. You're twins, and so it's really cool. Cool. Yeah, trust me, cool, said Benjamin, showing his approval. Christina was immediately alert. Who dared to beat her? When she came to the audience and saw Kathy, she immediately realized who her main rivals were. The others in the audience were not surprised at the resemblance. Each of them has already heard or even seen how people change their appearance beyond recognition. The beauty industry helps them in this. However, such a quick, effective solution as Michael Holiday was the first time, and few people knew about it. Listen, girls, you look like sisters. You even have the same height and equipment. How are we going to tell you apart? Surprise one of the girls in the group at recess. In my opinion, by manners, said a smart guy with glasses named Gleb. Looks are nothing, but intelligence determines everything, he added, to somehow save himself from Christina's perplexed look. It's easy to tell us apart. The one next to Benjamin is me, Kathy. And if Benjamin is not around, it will be Christina, said Kathy. The crowd laughed, but Christina could see that she had accepted the challenge and was now ready to fight to the last bullet. Chapter 5. Benjamin, as usual, was relaxing in a nightclub, surrounded by his friends. When he was just approaching the entrance, someone called out to him from behind. Chesterton delayed for a second. A male voice sounded. Benjamin turned around and saw not far from him a guy in a black leather jacket that was a size too big. But it wasn't the jacket that impressed him the most. The very fact of this man's appearance in his life, Benjamin felt a shiver run through his body. You, William, hi. What are you doing here? He asked in utter confusion. Rule could barely keep his gaze on his face. Boys, his eyes darted rough scars all over William's face. Such fates. And you thought I was rotting in a hospital bed. Wrong if I thought that. I found my strength and survived, and now I intend to achieve my own. By all means, William said. Benjamin's eyes flashed back to the events of 3 years ago. William was his best friend. They had gone to programming school together. William had shown great promise. Even at that time, he was already taking orders from time to time and earning good money. There were never any secrets or disagreements between him and Benjamin. Benjamin, meanwhile, often went with his father to his office, where he gave instructions to his managers. Everything must have a financial component, otherwise our actions are immoral, he used to say in order to motivate his employees. As a teenager, Benjamin took these words too literally. In addition, the story of his friend William, who was already earning his own money, made him think about his own source of income. Dad, I want to go into business like you and make a lot of money. How did you tell your dad? What's the problem? I'm very happy that my son is so strongly motivated. All you have to do is find a field, and I'll help in any way I can, his father assured him at the time. Benjamin relied entirely on William in this matter. He conveyed his father's intentions to support their endeavor. William shrugged his shoulders and said that for the time being he intended to support himself as a teenager, and that he would only start thinking about his own business after he had received a higher education. But the idea of having his own income did not give Benjamin any rest when he came up with a plan on his own. It was a software development in the banking sphere, which Benjamin learned about in some other country. William immediately understood the idea and wrote the program. Benjamin started to implement it. He gathered a team and started to earn the first money, until unscrupulous people laid their eyes on their business. William noticed it right away and said, "You should tell your father that we are being persecuted and want to take away our business. If the bandits find out whose son we are, they'll leave us alone. This way they think we're just young guys who decided to take off on our own. So for some reason, I wasn't gonna listen to my friend. Don't worry about it. In business, it's normal to get in trouble. I've seen my father deal with these things all my life. He doesn't complain to anyone, he talks to everyone, and solves everything himself. I have to learn to be independent too," she said. But William doubted whether they could manage on their own. One day a stranger came over, introduced himself as someone's lawyer, charged that their program had violated someone's rights, and billed them for moral damages. William again insisted that Benjamin consult with his father about how to handle the situation. Benjamin again acted cocky. "Don't worry, William, we won't pay them any money. If he comes again, we'll call him in for a one-on-one talk. And then we'll work it out," Benjamin said, and ignored him. A couple weeks later, 3 men came to them. The demands were the same, only this time they demanded a much larger sum than the last time. Benjamin kept his word and arranged a man-to-man talk on the waterfront, where they went with their friends in 2 cars. William was among them. The conversation did not work out. As soon as Benjamin tried to object, 2 unfamiliar adult males called their accomplices, and a group fight ensued. Benjamin immediately figured that his boys could not handle such a powerful attack. He managed to gather his friends into one automobile and drove away. They noticed William's absence among them too late. Only then did one of them call the police to report the fight. Anonymously, a couple days later, Benjamin showed up at the hospital with a wad of cash. "Buddy, you did good, but no hard feelings. You know my dad. He's already warned me twice. If there's trouble with the police again, he won't put me in for a while. He'll put his business in. You get better and try not to make a fuss with the police. Then we took care of it ourselves," Benjamin said and left. William decided to go along with his friend again. He didn't file a police report and explained it to the doctors as a random street scuffle. Only a month later, when he was finally allowed to stand up, William went to the mirror, and when he saw his reflection, he almost fainted. His face was completely covered with lines. The doctor later told him that they were slash wounds. He advised him to have plastic surgery later and get his face cleaned up. But the plastic surgeon turned out to be honest. He said that the face would not become the same. There would still be rough features and a lack of symmetry. After William was discharged from the hospital, he decided never to make eye contact with people again. He had no parents, and his few friends and acquaintances no longer recognized him on the street. They simply expressed sympathy and advised him to look for solutions. This continued until William had exhausted his money supply. And then he decided to start a new life by all means. So he first sent his resume with a photo of himself before the tragic events. He was approved and called in for his interview. But as soon as the girl from the personnel department saw the guy with a disfigured face, she hurried to finish the interview as quickly as possible. Out of politeness, she promised that William would be contacted soon, but no call was made. At the next interview, a girl of William's age was also caught. When it was William's turn and he crossed the threshold of the office, she screamed with fright and was about to call William's security. He had to urgently apologize and removed himself from the office. In the future, he began to send resumes without a photo, but indicated that he had defects in appearance. However, no one responded to his resumes anymore. William guessed why. "Benjamin, I need help." They said my face could be fixed with plastic surgery, but it turns out it's expensive. I came to you as a friend. Maybe you can help me out for now. And then I'll get a job, and I'll be with you," William said. Benjamin avoided this outcome the most. Someone had already informed his father that he was dealing with criminal elements again, and had even been reported to the police. His father was extremely concerned about the matter. He carefully asked Benjamin about the circumstances of the incident, but Benjamin did not reveal anything so as not to lose his father's trust. And if he learned of William's appearance, the old secret risked becoming known to spoil Benjamin's prospects. Benjamin hastily slipped his hands into his pocket and pulled out some bills. "Take this one for now. I don't have any more cash on me. You and I will meet again in the next few days and I will give the required amount," Benjamin said in a hurry. "But you can do something, even without money," said William. "All you have to do is talk to your father and get a reference for me so that I can somehow increase my chances of getting a job. And that's not gonna be easy. I'll tell you my dad doesn't like to vouch for others, but I'll talk to him about it and let you know." "You live at the same old address?" Benjamin asked. "No, mostly at the train stations," answered William. Then Benjamin chose some words to cheer up his old friend and hurried to the club to meet his friends. William realized at once that he could not count on his friend's help, so he walked away with his head down to wander around the city until midnight. With the money, Benjamin William decided to finally grab a bite to eat at a roadside fast food outlet. While he sat and ate on the big screen, an advertisement for Dr. Holliday's clinic was spinning. "Have you long dreamed of becoming a replica of your favorite star? We thought it was expensive. It used to be. But now this problem is solved thanks to the unique solution and scientific developments of Dr. Michael Holliday. Transformation into a different personality is possible in just one day. And such a procedure costs no more than your lunch in the canteen," said the advertisement. Hearing such an unconventional offer, William had a brilliant idea. A couple of days later, he visited Dr. Holliday's clinic. Smith was met by a beautiful girl and immediately changed in her face. "You can't have a young man in here," she said, looking at William's unfashionable clothes and his unshaven face. "Excuse me, but I'm here to see Dr. Holliday." "I really need his help," said William. "I'm sorry, but we have a dress code and face control. This offer is limited," the girl said, and started pushing him out the door. William tried to explain his situation to the girl, but it was all in vain. The beautiful girl's attacks were joined by a crowd of girls and women who were sitting in line to the doctor and waiting for an appointment to leave his office with completely different faces. And you could already tell by them that he was homeless. Probably drank his face off too. "Young lady, you advertise yourself as a decent clinic, and here you have a homeless man coming in. What kind of disrespect for your customers?" said one of them. "But I have that case where my natural appearance is 5 minutes away from unpleasantness." William tried to explain, but no one was going to take in what he was saying. After a few minutes of arguing, with his head down, William left the clinic. His last hope now lay in Benjamin's conscience, but the latter seemed to forget his promise in a moment, engaging the two beauties of his dreams with his attention. Chapter 6. "Kathy, if I suddenly look at Christina, you know it's my attempt to make sure I'm hugging you. It's easy to confuse the two of you," Benjamin once said, after my relationship with Kathy was solidified. "But be careful, we may look alike, but there's a gulf between us. Their voice is different, their morals are different, and it's a sport, it's impossible," Kathy said. "That's true. I noticed that a long time ago," said Benjamin. "But still, for a while you kept playing on two fronts." Kathy smiled a sly smile. "I needed that to make the right choice. But Christina disappointed me immediately. She's too risky with my friends," Benjamin said. "And I thought you were disappointed in her after the photo of her with an old oligarch in an embrace spread," said Kathy. "But that too. Although then she tried to blame it on you. But I determined from those photos that it wasn't you, because you were making me do my higher math homework that day," said Benjamin. By the way, it was your method with higher math that my parents liked too. They would like to meet you sometime as soon as possible, she added. Lissa couldn't believe her ears. She is madly in love with Benjamin and would do anything for him. And not only is she in a relationship with him, but her parents are already interested in her. I'm all for it. I'd love to meet them. I think a guy like you could only be raised by very wise parents, she said excitedly. Well, since you really think so, get ready. I'll try to organize evenings. An acquaintance next weekend, Benjamin promised. Kathy, elated by the upcoming momentous occasion, decided to share her joy with her mother. Mom, I didn't tell you right away, but I have a boyfriend, she said in the evening in the kitchen, helping to prepare dinner. How happy is that? But don't get married yet. You need to finish your studies, get a job, and then get married. Tell your boyfriend that, Mom said. One doesn't interfere with the other. Mom, you have old-fashioned views, said Kathy. I'll look at you when you've got a baby crying all night, and you've got a session coming up, and I need an unprepared look. Husband's not happy. Then what do you have to say about it? One does not prevent the other. We've been there, we know. And argue with Mom, said Clara, not distracted from her piece of text in her hands. Oh, Mom of your youth, that was a lot to take in. But the next generation learned the right lessons from it all. We have different realities. For example, if I marry Benjamin, I don't have to think about all those worries in his family. It's all handled by domestic staff or robots. Yes, they have robots working everywhere, in his father's office, at home, and in the garden, Kathy said dreamily. God, don't remind me about those metal monsters. They've put half the town out of work as it is. I don't want to hear about them. So this Benjamin can afford what? He's the son of a Chesterton oligarch. Everybody knows him. That son is about to take his place. He promised to hand over part of the campaign if Benjamin would wise up and find himself a nice girl, a good girl, and he chose me. He wants me to meet his parents this weekend, Kathy said. You mean the same son of a rich family? I warned you that he might disappoint you, but you're still flying under the radar. People like that don't think of ordinary people as equal. Your Benjamin, of course, can make your head spin for a while, but I'm afraid you'll cry afterwards. It's best not to be under any illusions, Mother said. It's time you changed your mindset to a positive one. I thought you'd be supportive. You'll see, I'll be able to win his parents over, said Kathy, puffing up her cheeks, and went to her room. She was going to do her homework, but Benjamin did not leave her mind. Kathy crammed her homework and went to bed. In the morning, her mother Clara was awakened by her daughter's precise scream. She ran out of the bedroom and headed to her daughter's room. Kathy stood in front of the mirror with her hands covering her face and continued to scream. What's wrong? What's with all the screaming? Asked the mother. Kathy did not take her palms off her face and cried. My face barely spoke, Adriana. What's wrong with your face? Show me. Clara tried to see her daughter's face, but she huddled in a corner and continued to cry. God, what happened? Why don't you explain first? Is something irreparable? Said the mother, and headed for the exit. Yes, I've turned into a homeland. Kathy shouted after her and removed her hands. When she saw her daughter's new face, she was horrified. Smooth skin. Kathy was covered in solid wrinkles. Her face had lost symmetry. Her eyes were barely visible. All in all, Kathy's face could now be characterized as a perfect fruit from the market. Her mother clutched her heart and sat down on the edge of the sofa. I asked you not to experiment on your already beautiful appearance. You're a beauty in your youth. You're still very young. Why did you have to go to all that trouble to transform yourself? My God, what are we going to do now? Where is your doctor who did all this? Dial his number quickly. Dad, he'll take you to him. In the meantime, why don't you tell them you're sick? God, how can you do this? The outrage was read overnight by the mother. Hearing the complaints of the clients of Dr. Holliday's clinic, replied that Kathy could only come up tomorrow. During the course of today, life for Kathy became a total nightmare. She stopped eating and drinking. She was categorically afraid to go to the mirror and see her ugly reflection. She feverishly studied materials on artificial face restoration. The internet gave out stories, one sadder than the other. Meanwhile, reassured by Kathy's absence, Benjamin decided to pick her up after school. He called her when he had already arrived at her house. Alyssa had to lie that she had gone with her mother to her grandmother and would come only in 3 days. She herself then prayed to God that she would be able to restore her face in 3 days, and when she remembered that in the meantime she was living, enjoying her new face and beautifying herself in front of Benjamin, the ground went away from under her feet. The next day came. Kathy was already waiting for Dr. Holliday outside his office in the early morning hours. He took one look at her and didn't even raise an eyebrow. This can happen if you do not take good care of your face. The material is very fragile and can be shaped even by strong emotions. But it's okay. There is a way to restore everything as it was and even make it a little better. But this time the cost will be a little higher because we will try on a different material. Since you didn't save the previous one, said the doctor, do something important faster, Kathy begged. Excuse me, but what will the cost be? Asked the father cautiously to the doctor. Dr. Holliday smiled with a satisfied look and scribbled something on the paper. His mood was generally upbeat these days, as his first clients were already coming back to him and were willing to shell out any money. And now that the doctor had full power over them, he could name any price he wanted. This was his original idea, which no one had realized much about. If he had set an initially high price, like other inventors, no one would have come to him. And for symbolic pennies came a lot of young girls and boys who wanted to become like anyone but themselves. Now these young people make up the entire line that crowds around his office. True, they all cover their faces with masks and other ways. To refuse the services of the doctor now, they do not have the opportunity because to eliminate the sharply appeared wrinkle can also only himself, so to speak, the antidote. He also has a unique one. Seeing the prescribed price, Liam sat down on the chair and grasped his heart. Doctor, are you sure your procedure costs that much? Even the rich can't afford it. Well, that's one way of putting it. A man's face is at stake, and a man's face is an indication of his essence. You can go without my procedures, but then you will have to gradually get used to the new reality, said the doctor with a smile, looking at the wrinkles on Kathy's face. This is outrageous. It looks like a fraud. You can't do this. What will happen to my daughter's face? Obviously, she can't go out in public like that now. But this amount of money, it's completely out of our family's reach, the father said indignantly. But no one is rushing you. You can wait until you have saved up the necessary amount. Some people take out loans as an alternative. Well, and if even that does not suit you, then there is only the service of a psychologist, so that your daughter learns to live with her new face. By the way, I can recommend a great therapist. She's in the building next door. Here's her card, the doctor said, and held out his wife Adriana's business card. Kathy and her father left the doctor's office as if they had been dipped in water. If on the way to the doctor's office her father had still reprimanded his daughter for experimenting with her appearance, now he was worried about her. And the doctor's approach caused a wave of anger in him. And at home he was already telling Clara, with great indignation, about the exorbitant cost of the new procedure. It's unthinkable. We wouldn't have that much money, even if we sold the apartment and had to beg, said Clara. What kind of nonsense is that? We won't sell the apartment under any circumstances, resented Liam. Well, what to do with your daughter's face now? Don't you feel sorry for her? How will she show her face in public now? Moreover, she was in a relationship with her boyfriend, the mother said. Let her sit in the corner and think about what to do next. I have no options, the father said, and went to his room. Kathy sat silently with her hands over her face. Her mother approached her and asked her to show her face again, to see into her daughter's face. She was horrified again. It would only take Holliday to restore Kathy's former beauty. Chapter 7. Dr. Michael Holliday is today enjoying life in the huge house he bought recently. His wife, meanwhile, has returned from shopping satisfied and in a good mood. Adriana, do you think my parents would like our house? He asked thoughtfully. I don't know why you'd ask that. You're not going to bring them to our house, said his wife wearily. What do you mean? Bring it? They're my parents. They are the people who gave me life, upbringing, education, and everything else. In my old age, can't I invite them to my house to live with me for a while? That's not the deal. They're elderly and they need care. And I didn't sign up for that. Elderly people don't do well when they move. They won't like it here, Adriana said. But I have to try to make him like it. You know, my mom's never been happy with me my whole life. Maybe that's why I've gotten results. But there's something childish inside of me that needs to come out. And now that I'm an adult, now that my parents aren't so principled, it's a good time to iron out the inner resentments. We need time together. I think I'll go over there one of these days and ask them to stay with us. And you, my dear, you could do something other than run to the stores and salons. Maybe some sense of values would come into your head. Michael rebuked Adriana. But I need time to figure out what I want to be. Adriana said thoughtfully. Do you have a professional degree? What's the problem? You go and work in a specialty, like me, for example, I answered. Michael, you feel good because your specialty is interesting. You make a difference in people's lives. What's interesting about my specialty? Nothing. I want to work with people, like giving them advice, and I want them to pay me well, Adriana said dreamily. There's only so much trouble out there picking up their patients who don't have the money for a second facial transformation procedure. Teach them to accept their ugly looks. That's where the money will be, Michael said. He thought about it for a moment, and then he burst into rapture. Actually, I've just come up with a brilliant idea. So they come to me for a new face. I do it the first time for symbolic money, and the second time I already put a real bill. And so on up. And not everybody can pay the real bill. Some of them leave. They have to live now with the face of an elderly person. That's how you can gather and do self-esteem training. They really need it, Michael said. I guess this kind of activity works for me. I listened to a lecture by a guru the other day. I can listen to a couple more lectures. The program will be ready. And you, please do not reject those who have no money. Redirect them to me, said Adriana. When finally caught up with the essence of the new family business, she and her husband were happy that now they can use any opportunity for the benefit of the family. Only they couldn't agree on Michael's parents. She told him in no uncertain terms that she wasn't going to have them in her house. But Michael was determined to earn his parents' approval at any cost. He had simply been drawn in that direction for years. Recently, he talked to his friend about it. But he too was puzzled. I don't understand why such aspirations. Michael then tried to explain his position to his friend. You see, many people have such a desire to grow up, to be established, and to build a new adult relationship with their parents, where there is approval, respect, acceptance. I was a bit of a naughty kid growing up. My parents tried in every possible way to guide me to the right path, and their directions were perceived by my childish psyche as violence. That's what's still bothering me today. And if I reorganize it all, I think my worldview will be different, Michael said thoughtfully. Don't worry about it. Michael, let it all go and enjoy life. You can't change your parents for what they were. They'll be like that for the rest of their lives, said the friend. Michael wasn't too upset when even his closest friend didn't get his point. After a while, he talked about it with Ethan, who did not want to participate in the business, but continued to work on their common invention. I see your point. Michael, you are right. It should definitely be done. We are shaped by the totality of our feelings. If a feeling has a place, then it will have to come off of it. Then it has to be related to reality. If you find a relationship with them, then you yourself will have a leap in development. Believe me, I have long been interested in such matters, said Ethan. Ethan, thank you. Once again, I am convinced that you are a unique person. How are you doing? You still haven't thought about joining our cause. It's going pretty well, by the way, Michael said. I know, Michael, but I remembered pretty well. That's not all. You'll see the rest when the time comes, said Ethan. And he continued to work meticulously on his inventions. In the meantime, Michael took a little vacation and came to his parents. They were happy to see their son. Michael talked about his new successes, about the purchase of a new bakehouse, and suggested that his parents move in with him or at least live with them for a while. To which the mother reacted in the usual way. "Oh no, you don't. What will happen to my vegetable garden? No, no, no. Who would help me weed the beds, plant cabbage, or remove weeds?" She cut it off. But not enough. Well, how many cannot disappear into the vegetable garden? Vegetables are available everywhere now. I need you as moral support. Remember, your entire youth was spent running around. You rarely had the energy to talk to me, like when you were a kid. Maybe you can find such an opportunity now, Michael said. No, don't even ask. I would still think about it, and if you had money, I'd understand teaching my grandchildren. So what's the point of your father and I interfering with your life? The mother insisted. Michael sighed and thought, Mom, I just want to be still your favorite son, like in my deep childhood. And we didn't spend much time with Dad either. Just want to make up for it, said, but all his arguments were in vain. His mother wouldn't go to see him, and his father would only repeat after her. Michael returned to his home in a sad mood. On the way, his head was filled with new ideas about how to increase his capital and how to afford even more goods. What if then his parents wanted to reward him with their attention? Chapter 8. For 3 months now, Kathy has been in a deep depression. The parents couldn't do anything to help. Her mother had barely managed to get a year's deferment on her studies. Otherwise, Kathy is completely bogged down in her life. She walks within the 4 walls of her room. Fox looks at the pictures on her phone over and over again, seeing other people passing away and sinking back into hopeless sadness. After trying several times to call and see each other, Benjamin became frustrated. He did not have time to deal with his relationship in detail. On the other hand, his parents were in a hurry to finally show the beautiful girl who could win their son's heart and influence his views so much. For Christina, the absence of Kathy was a real gift. There were rumors among her friends that Kathy had big problems with her appearance, and she would not soon be able to return to society. Christina decided not to miss this moment. In 3 months, she easily became Benjamin's closest friend, and he was already ready to introduce her to his parents on the day of their meeting. As usual, Christina acted relaxed. Benjamin was proud in front of his parents that he had such a beautiful and interesting companion. Only the Chesterton oligarch was not thrilled with the bride candidate, but he tried not to show it. When the family evening at the restaurant was in full swing, Chesterton stepped out briefly to answer a phone call. No one close to him took any notice. Meanwhile, he managed to catch his sister-in-law in the hallway by the bathroom and grabbed her arm. "What do you think yourself beautiful?" he asked menacingly. "I don't know what you mean." Christina was horrified. "Do not build yourself an innocent sheep. You are the one who accompanies my assistant on his trips abroad, and my closest friend. The restaurateur Klinsky is your regular customer. I remember you well. Maybe you had a little too much to drink." Said, "I'm sorry, you must have me confused with Kathy. She's the one who moonlights on the court. She's the one who's got her eye on Benjamin. And she's been messing with me. Remember, Benjamin was going to introduce me to you 3 months ago, and it was canceled because Kathy had to go away with a regular client. It's just that she also goes to the same transformational coach. She specifically ordered a copy of my look to attract Benjamin. I can barely cope with fighting that girl myself." Christina spouted a pre-prepared cover story. Chesterton did not fully believe the girl's words, but hesitated and let her go. Christina made the right conclusions. She needs to hurry in conquering Benjamin. Otherwise, his parents may interfere with them in the future. How I had no trouble already after 4 months to make Benjamin himself propose marriage and be together for life. The Chesterton oligarch persuaded his son to take his time, to wait a little, but his wife was already under the influence of Christina. In the end, the family played a luxurious wedding. The young were bought a separate house. The father led his 20-year-old son to his business, and the life of all played with new colors, until an unexpected surprise happened. In his life, he was living. Early on a weekend morning, Benjamin hugged his young wife and decided to get plenty of sleep today. And he was living and had plans of his own for today. She was going on a grand shopping spree. She carefully moved Benjamin's arms gently onto the pillow and tiptoed out of the bedroom herself. Not 2 minutes later, Benjamin had to jump out of bed. Hearing a scream from the bathroom, Benjamin came running and saw Christina. She was sitting on the floor with her hands over her face and continued to scream. "What's wrong? Honey, what scared you?" asked. Christina couldn't find the words. She kept screaming and stomping her feet in the bathroom. "Benjamin, get out of here. Don't you need to see this? What's wrong? God damn it, will you at least explain? I was confused, and my face is burned. I put on a new mask yesterday. I think they tricked me at the store. My skin burned." Screaming Christina. "Oh, come on, don't beat yourself up. We'll go to the doctor. He'll prescribe some medicine, and it'll heal. Come on, get ready. I'll drive you." Christina didn't hesitate. She wrapped a scarf around her face. She put on large glasses, let her hair down, and in an hour she was already sitting in Dr. Holliday's office. There was nothing unexpected about this for Michael. In fact, his business had been on the upswing lately. Christina, on the other hand, was serene. "Doctor, didn't you warn me there would be consequences like this? How am I going to explain all this to my husband now? He'd faint if he saw me like this. In fact, any other man would go crazy in fear of my face." "Yes, and began to warn you in the beginning, because our unique material has such a property. It dissolves when a person deceives himself. There must have been some changes in your life. What are you talking about?" "Doctor, this is inhuman. It's cynical and unethical of you. How am I supposed to live with this?" Christina resented it. There are two ways. Either a person removes complaints about his appearance and transfers attention to the inner life. Then after some time, the face itself will recover and become more beautiful than C.C. Kimalbi. Or you have to repeat the procedure, and that will only be enough for a few months. Then one has to repeat it again. If one doesn't want to do the work internally, said the doctor. "I don't want to hear it. About your fairy tales, about the inside. I need you to fix my face right today. Right now," Christina said firmly. "No problem. The cost will be like this," said Michael, and drew some numbers on the paper. The numbers made Christina furious again. The doctor calmly guided her to the only correct solution in this case, again and again repeating his arguments in different words. Michael sometimes wondered himself why he liked to do such cynical things to people, and then to look at their suffering and turn out to be a savior for them again. But big money, impenetrable queues at clinics, rising popularity took his thoughts in a different direction. He quickly switched from thinking to new dreams, and everything fell into place. When he heard the cost of a Christina facial, even Benjamin was taken aback. "That's nice. Where are we gonna get that kind of money? I could pull some money out of the company's working capital, but that would hurt our future, and my father wouldn't approve. Maybe there's an easier way. What if you really take an internal approach?" "Are you crazy? I'm 20 years old and you're telling me to do something I don't know what to do. I need my old face. Otherwise, I can't be held accountable for my actions. I'm willing to do anything for this goal." Screaming Christina. "We are thinking about calling again and asking for a part of the money to restore the artificial face. Neighbors might." This was the first time Benjamin was faced with such a dilemma. After a couple weeks of scandals and resentment, Benjamin found a way to get the money. He decided to pull it out of his father's investment in his company. In the meantime, Christina, wearing the same big glasses and scarf, went to listen to Adriana's lectures. Everyone knew about how to love herself with any appearance. Adriana was happy to have more listeners day by day. Money was flowing into their family again. Chapter 9. A year passed imperceptibly. Christina has long since regained her beautiful face as a famous singer and continues to please Benjamin. Meanwhile, instead of increasing income, Chesterton noticed that his son's capital was melting before his eyes. He had noticed before that his son's expenses were too high, disproportionate to his income. Chesterton's wife was not accepting of Christina from the beginning, and when she found out that with her arrival and the money in the family began to leak, she became furious. "We have to do something to get our son away from this upstart," she said to her husband. He'd been hatching the idea himself. "I agree. I don't like her from the start. I've talked to Benjamin about it many times, but he can't be persuaded. She seems to have opened his head. He doesn't even notice it. He doesn't know about her dark past. She blatantly denies everything," Chesterton said. "Do you remember when he lived? He was friends with some other girl for a while, and then she suddenly disappeared. This one was nice, well-mannered, but somehow Benjamin missed her. Isn't there any other girl in the world but that hysterical girl? Maybe he'll meet someone else. If that Christina gives birth again, there'll be no peace in the house. They usually give birth like that, so they have to do something to get a fortune from the family." Chesterton didn't think twice. He usually has many ways to control reality, both his own and others. "I know how to solve this issue. It's a lot easier than we think with just one phone call," he said, and started going through the numbers on his phone. Meanwhile, back at the Benjamin house, the hysteria is back. Christina went for some kind of wellness treatment yesterday and came back happy. But this morning she's back in front of the mirror and is screaming for Dr. Holliday. Benjamin, hearing her screams, has already guessed what happened. He didn't even bother to argue with Christina this time. It was useless. That day he had taken another large tranche out of the company's turnover, which his deputies had secretly reported to his father. Chesterton only nodded his head and reassured his employees, promising that this outrage would soon be over. He also warned that Benjamin might need help and support during this period, and they took note. So a mysterious girl appeared in Benjamin's life. She was an ordinary girl from the village who came to conquer the big city. But the task turned out to be not so simple. Student life quickly bored her constantly lack of money, stress, and strain. Then she consciously decided to take a different path. She has had a different life ever since. Cindy spends her time around wealthy guys and they pay her generously. Chesterton decided not to remember how his paths crossed with this lovely young lady. He simply called her up and explained the task. One must first steal one nice guy away from one hysterical woman, and then withdraw from his life herself. Cindy didn't bother to be ceremonious. She went straight to Benjamin's office, knocked on his office, and stated that she was looking for a job from secretary or personal assistant. Benjamin at first wanted to refuse since he already had both, but the advance warning and deputies influenced the course of the case. Benjamin has to get rid of the older woman in the secretary's chair and put the young Cindy in it. And further, to translate business relations into friendly relations was not difficult for Cindy. One day, Chesterton came to Benjamin's office unannounced and found them together in the smoking room. He unwittingly witnessed their conversation. You don't appreciate what you have. If your parents advise you to do something, you should think twice before protesting. But I'm old enough to make my own decisions," said Benjamin. "Making a decision is not the most important thing. Everyone makes a decision about everything. Life itself forces us to make decisions every day, even every hour. But the point is how those decisions turn out in the end. Therefore, there is no need to rush. In what is even useful to rely on the opinion of others. We want everything to be our way. Then we get disappointed with everything in life, but we forget about our wrong decisions," Cindy said. Maybe Benjamin is right about something. So it is important to be able to distinguish where our desires are and where the right decisions are. The former and the latter may not always coincide. Parents have been down this road many times, and they may have their own valuable insights. It happens the other way around. When you really want your parents' involvement in decision-making, you don't have them. Like in my case, for example, you want to ask for advice, you want to share your innermost feelings, and you don't have that person. You do, Cindy said. And never like my girlfriends, said Benjamin. What do you do at times like this? Asked Cindy. I just ignore them and choose my girlfriend. Imagine a different reality, where both you and your parents like your girlfriend. You don't have to ignore anyone then, Cindy said. Do I have to ignore all the girls in the world? Asked Benjamin. No, she can be the kind you like, or maybe your parents' taste. Either way, you will know your girlfriend well, and you will clearly understand your parents' thoughts, and you will be the kind of person who knows how to communicate all this to your girlfriend. It's called compromising reality. I realize thinking is not in fashion these days. It's easier to chop from the shoulder, turn away, ignore, insist on your own, and forget about the rest. Cardinal decisions have long been our trump cards, but they create internal conflicts, prevent you from living, and warn you against it, Cindy said. Benjamin did not answer anything. Cindy talked for a long time about how Benjamin had been lucky with his fate, that he should appreciate his opportunities, that he should think about education, about gaining life experience. But the thing that surprised Chesterton the most was her final sentences. When you pass all the tests of maturity, it won't matter to others what kind of girl you're dating or what kind of relationship you have, because everyone around you will trust you. You will then have no one, not even your parents, interfering with your life. They will know that even if you make a mistake, you are able to deal with the consequences on your own, she said. Chesterton nodded his head in surprise and walked on. His experiment seemed to have succeeded. Chapter 10. Do you even know who you're dealing with? Shouted Christina, bursting into the police chief's office. Lady, you can't come in here. All matters are handled by the investigator on duty, tried to explain. But he managed with shouting and hysterics to get the police officers to deal with Dr. Holliday's activities. Christina went home with a sense of satisfaction. She had hoped that the police would nail the doctor properly, and he would finally agree to give her another beauty restoration procedure for free. Or for a less affordable amount, not for the cost of 2 towers. But a couple days later, she gets a call. It's the police. You complained about the activities of Holliday the scientist. We checked him out, the cop said. How'd it turn out? He's revised his client policy, Christina said. It's an internal matter for his clinic. But we did a legal assessment of his activities. In short, he has not violated any laws of our country. Therefore, we have no grounds to punish him, the police officer said. How is it no grounds when he earns 1 quadrillion by fraudulent means, without warning clients about the risks? The fact is that people go to him by their own decision. No one is forcing them. The doctor hangs on the wall of his clinic that the artificial face will not last long, that it will reform even from wrong thoughts. And then the client himself is responsible for the exploitation of his face. Citizen, don't distract us from our work. Goodbye, said the policeman, and hung up. Christina got even more angry. She decided to go the usual way. According to the U.S., I can't get a deal with the doctor. We'll have to pay him again. You won't refuse me, she said in a sad voice. I don't want to discuss the matter now. I'm sorry, Christina. I'll be home late. I have to take care of business and catch up on my studies. Benjamin answered briefly and hung up the phone. Christina had not yet realized that it was their story that had come to an end. Chapter 11 Road, almost a year and a half in confinement and depression, had not gone to waste for Kathy. She had learned to live a little differently. On days of listlessness and sadness, she reached into her parents' bookshelf for the first time to distract herself somehow. In one book, she found a heroine with a similar fate, and in another she found a stubborn man who would not give up under any circumstances, and eventually succeeded. With each new book she read, she had a drop of hope that she would someday be able to give herself and go out in life. With each new book she read, she had a sliver of hope that she would someday be able to conjure herself up and face life. On this day, She was inspired by yet another story of a hapless hero's triumph. What the hell? Maybe someone will be interested in my story, she thought, and started writing a letter to the publisher with the title of her story. She didn't bother much. She liked to call things by their proper names. Such was the case with the title of the book, How I Lost My Love to a Girl of Easy Behavior. Kathy in the book described her love for Benjamin, her struggle to win his heart, her attempts to please his fantasies, and of course, her typical failure with the loss of her artificial and then natural beauty. To demonstrate even more vividly, he attached his before and after photos. After sending the letter, she quickly switched to another clinic, and the letter was already forgotten the next day. A month or more later, her mother brought her a letter in an envelope, and in addition to the letter, there was a decent amount of money. It was not so much money that she could get her face back, but it was substantial enough. In the letter, she is approached by a representative of a publishing house. He writes that her book has aroused great interest among readers, and they intend to repeat the circulation. He also unobtrusively asks to respond to emails Kathy writes to readers in order to stimulate book sales. Kathy couldn't believe her eyes at first. Then she opened her email account and was blown away by the number of emails and responses. Complete strangers were writing to her with words of encouragement, admiring her courage, giving her helpful advice, and wanting to get to know her better. Among these letters was even an offer to be the heroine of a TV program. Kathy accepted the offer without a second thought. No, not to complain about her fate and her failures, but to share her impressions from her experiments, as well as to warn others about how deceitful people can be in the field of fulfillment of our wishes. Shortly after the telecast with Kathy following Dr. Holliday, again the uniformed men came, but the man knew his risks, so he did not talk to them. His lawyer Cyril spoke to the law for him. Chapter 12. Dr. Holliday and his wife Adriana today decided to celebrate the successful closing of the criminal case on his activities. The domestic staff had prepared sumptuous tables for them and then vacated the house. She was irresistible in her gorgeous couture gown. Michael was also happy, but the feeling of missing something important kept him in suspense. He decided to talk to his wife about it once again. Maybe I can finally convince my parents to come live with us. They won't cause you any trouble, but their presence is very important to me. What do you want to do? I'm planning to work in the islands for the winter. All my clients are in favor of it. We will grow and develop on the ocean, said Adriana dreamily. I've talked to them many times about it. They don't agree. They are well aware that you don't like them, so they don't want to, said Michael. Well, you're weird. They're your parents. You don't have to love them. You don't have to love them, said Adriana. But this is our house. You're the owner of this house. You're my soulmate. You should at least have the courtesy to talk to them once in a while. Oh, Michael, let's not get all sentimental. I've got my own things to do. And you're the Georgian with your parents. Let's not get negative. I want to raise a glass to our successes with you, she said. Michael did not pursue the topic of parents further. That evening they drank wine, celebrated their successes, and made far-reaching financial plans. Toward morning, Michael had a dream in which a huge black swan was sitting on the roof of his house. The swan's wingspan is capable of throwing a man off his path. Michael sees himself from the outside, as if he were a little boy. He is scared and seeks shelter, but cannot find a place to hide. Suddenly, he sees his parents moving away from him holding hands. He runs after them, but it's as if they don't hear him. The black swan now begins to chase him. Michael stops breathing out of fear. The whole surrounding space floats in his eyes. He tries to scream and call for help, but his voice fades into his chest. Michael opens his eyes to what little broken window of his house. Before he could realize what was happening, two men in special clothing grabbed him and carried him towards the exit. Others came in next and carried Adriana out. The street was crowded. Neighbors had long ago gathered around the house and looked in horror at the flames that completely engulfed the first floor of the huge house. They were giving first aid to the ambulance. She managed to inhale smoke and lost consciousness. Michael was on the verge of passing out, but the firefighters managed to put out the fire in time. Everyone moved away. The owners of the house were not badly injured. Michael, they sat in their garden, where the barely visible signs of landscaping remained, and looked sadly at the remains of their home. Chapter 13. Kathy decided to go out for the first time today, despite her fate and unattractive face. The main thing is not to pay attention to anyone and not to stay there long. If you feel that things are going wrong, come home quickly, my mother advised. No matter what happens, I will try to spend 2 o'clock among people, even if they laugh at me or say something insulting in my wake. It won't affect my mood, she said, and proudly rocked into reality. No sooner had she reached the nearest park than a woman's voice called out to her, "How do you know my name?" The older woman, her face completely covered in wrinkles, smiled at her life from the classroom. I know a little more than you might think. I've lived my life. Look at my wrinkles. Each one has a story," the older woman said. "I just wanted to tell you that you really are what's beautiful. You have your whole life ahead of you. Live and do good, and the rest will come," the old woman said to me, and went on with her warm smile. Then Kathy came to the park and took a seat on a bench. 2 lovers were already sitting there. The girl turned to Kathy and also suddenly said, "Hi. I'm glad you decided to go outside. Believe me, the world is not as cruel as we sometimes think it is, and the world also reflects our inner world. You wrote a wonderful book. I found a lot of similarities with you in it for myself, continuing to create and knowing that you are a wonderful person. Thank you. Did you read my book? Who hasn't? In this day and age, when everyone is obsessed with being anything but themselves, books like this are very interesting." At this, Kathy's mood rose to the heavens, and it seemed as if wings grew behind his back. But the world was not going to stop its surprises. On the way home, an older man spoke to her, complimenting her and wishing her creative success. There was a young woman in a business suit who treated her to a chocolate bar and praised her book. There was a young, handsome guy who admired her performance on a TV program, her courage. But not everything was going so well in Christina's life. Lately, Benjamin had changed completely. He would stay late at his office, and when he came in, he would go straight to bed. No entertainment. Christina decided to talk to him about it. "Benjamin, it's not going to work that way. You and I are still very young. We're spending these beautiful years wondering what you're going to do with your job. I've been held hostage to this whole transformation. I feel miserable. We need to have a serious talk about this," she said. Benjamin sat down opposite her and took her hand. "Are you right? We're young, and we don't know what we're wasting our lives on, especially me. But I'm getting smart now. I want to become a worthy representative of my family. If you think the same, you should stop your experiments with your looks and start studying too." "Those are the rules now," Benjamin said. "What other rules are you going to dictate to me now? How I should live my life? Who gives a shit about school? There are 1 million opportunities in the world to make a life for yourself without all this pointless fuss. You're being badly influenced by your environment. All your father's appointees in the form of your deputies want to turn you into a boring office monster. Come to your senses, fire everyone, and let's go back to our normal lives. We had such a good time. Remember," she pleaded. "That time has passed. There must be a measure for everything." "I'm not going to backtrack," said Benjamin. "How do you want it? Won't you give me money for a new procedure? Or I'll just sit in 4 walls with an ugly face. How long do I have to listen to the lectures of this know-it-all to learn how to look people in the eye with such a face?" Christina is hysterical again. "Christina, you don't need someone else's face. You were beautiful on your own. Just try to get your looks back, and everyone will be happy. That's not possible anymore either. But then you have to build up your inner beauty. I've heard that many people who are dissatisfied with their looks have worked on their inner world and soared through life on that. Try it. It might help," the guy said. "No, you gotta be kidding me. I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving you. said Christina, and started packing her things. When she had packed 4 full suitcases, Christina's ability to think returned, and she sat down to think. But there were no useful thoughts in her head. Then she dialed up her mountain, which had been borrowing their money for the last few months, helping to build sandcastles in her head. "Adriana, honey, save me. My young man is kicking me out of his apartment. He says he doesn't care what I look like. What am I supposed to do?" "Christina, I'm sorry, darling. But right now, I have that question hanging over my head. My house burned down. My husband and I live in the backyard. And every day we ask ourselves, what do we do? Do you happen to know what we should do?" Answered them. "I know everything, Kina. And even so. Well, sorry, I called another day." "You hang in there," said Christina, and hung up. A few minutes later, a cab was waiting for her to her house. On the way home, Christina was still angry and convinced herself that one bad story with one oligarch's son was not the end. There are plenty of rich people out there with her experience and her fighting attitude. She has no intention of staying on the sidelines of life. Holiday's doctors, meanwhile, are looking for hundreds of clients. And now the phone is bursting with calls, and he doesn't answer any of them. Instead of dealing with the problems with his house and the influx of new clients, he went to his old address, where he had started coming less and less often lately. The wooden wicket opened with a creak. An old woman, going through the fruit in the yard, threw her bucket on the ground and ran towards the guest. "Son, how long have you been away?" "We missed you," Michael's mother said, hugging him. "I have missed you very much too. How is Dad?" "Where is he?" he asked his mother. "Dad is in front of the TV as always. He will be very happy to see you." Then they sat down at the big family table. My favorite berry pie. Michael decided this evening to hide in front of his parents. "Mom, Dad, I had toiled and studied and worked and researched and experimented for so many years, and it seemed like I had succeeded. But recently there were events after which I began to doubt my path. I would like to ask your opinion. What am I doing wrong? Why is there something inside of me that is constantly rasping and does not let me relax?" said. "But it's a normal state. Man, you have big demands on the world. That's what pushes you forward. But no, it's a normal condition for a man. You have great demands on the world. That's what pushes you forward," Father said. "No, Father, you're wrong. This time is different for my son. That's something we should have talked about at some point. I'm glad he's ripe for it." Father didn't stay at the table long. He ate and went back to watching his TV. But Michael and his mother talked for a long time. "Son, you've really accomplished a lot. I am proud of you," the mother said when they had talked about everything. Michael felt like that little boy again, who made himself study hard day after day, to be diligent, to be interested in science, and then in time to open a clinic, to make a lot of money. As a smart man, he realized that everything is done in order to hear these words. That day came. That night, Michael slept in a completely different dream than before. He had dreamed some fabulously beautiful dreams and fantastic pictures. When he woke up in the morning, he told himself that life had been a success. He was in no hurry to leave his parents. From that day on, he started talking to his clients differently. He honestly warned them that they would not be able to wear someone else's face for a long time. He also raised the cost for the first treatment and honestly told them that they would have to repeat it many times. A week later, Adriana called. "Michael, don't you think you've been on too much vacation? Your clients are tearing down all the doors. Don't we need the money now? Actually, we're living in a rented apartment ourselves, in case you've forgotten." Said all the signs are on. I've assigned the clients to my assistant. Half of them will refuse our procedure when they find out the truth. I'm already telling them that you don't have to strive to become a different person. You have to protect your identity. I don't get it. What are you, brainwashed by the village? You're saying they're screwing up our achievement with their own hands. No, I just decided that I don't need to run anywhere now. I should have come to this sooner, but I kept listening to your wishes. and I've been putting off heart-to-heart talks with my parents for an unknown period of time," said Michael. "It makes sense. Your mother always disliked me, so she found a way to bring discord between us." "You let her do it," Adriana said, not hiding her anger. "Mom had nothing to do with it. She's always been good to you. By the way, I want to take them with me for the winter." "I really need them," Michael said. "Well, how do you want it? Just let me know in advance before you leave. I want to buy a ticket to the Canaries. I'll be there all winter. And afterwards we'll discuss how to live our lives," said Adriana, and hung up the phone. Chapter 14. Kathy came home in high spirits. Clara saw that her daughter was finally smiling for the first time, no matter how ugly her face looked, but when she smiled she became more attractive. "Mom, you have no idea. It turns out that there are so many good and deep people in the world," she said, not hiding her delight. "Well, and you wanted to live the rest of your life in four walls. How did you come to that conclusion?" "They came to me and told me everything. I've seen older people who have more wrinkles on their faces than I do, and yet they smile and compliment me. They thanked me for being able to express what is in their hearts. So it turns out that somewhere deep down we are similar to each other, but different only in appearance. How amazing is the world." Kathy told me. All evening, the parents. Then the family went to sleep in their rooms. And in the morning, Clara was awakened again by a precise scream from Kathy's room. She didn't startle much this time. "How was it then?" "Father, what could it be again? Why don't you go and have a look?" Did she nudge her husband in the side? "No. If I do, I won't have the words to comfort her. I'd rather do it myself. Maybe she's just playing a trick on us," said Liam, and turned on the other side to go back to sleep. She tiptoed to her daughter's room, where the screams and shrieks were still coming from. She cautiously opened the door, and when Kathy saw her mother, she broke out with renewed vigor with a scream that almost muffled her. "Mother, look, the face restored to my own face, which looks so much like you and Father, which has always been with me since I was a child. Look how beautiful, how smooth. Oh, my eyes, they glow. I see fire in them," screamed Kathy, bouncing to the ceiling. "At what a price," said Clara through a smile. "But now he's walking around happy with himself. And again, you go to become like some singer or actress?" asked the father, who had lost peace from his daughter's screams and even managed to reach the door. "No, no. And again, no. I am perfectly fine on my own," said Kathy, and jumped up to the ceiling again. So the downstairs neighbors started banging on the radiators. Chapter 15. Cindy caught Benjamin late in the evening in his office. When she walked in, he quickly closed the book and put it aside. "What are you reading?" "Nothing. Just some popular literature. I saw this book. There a girl writes her story of her outer appearance, then inner transformation. I'm impressed. I didn't even know you read books. Well, I can't be the cats of the rich forever," she thought. But she didn't say it out loud. "Yeah, sometimes I browse the hits," she said instead. "Anyway, I just came to say goodbye." "What's wrong? You don't like working with me?" "No, no, it's fine. Actually, from your father's company, we had a contract for a year. It's expiring and I decided not to renew it. But what about our friendship? Let's be honest. We both know this relationship is going nowhere, but it will be part of the experience. I have no beef with you. I don't think you do either. So best of luck to you and new heights. Glad to sit at the same table and chat sometime," Cindy said, heading for the exit. "Wait a minute. Remember when you said to appreciate what you have?" "Is that still true?" asked. "It's relevant for eternity," said Cindy, and closed the door behind her. Then she headed straight for Chesterton's office. He was already waiting for her. He placed the envelope on the desk and said, "I've been watching you influence my son. I think you're doing the wrong thing, and you're in the wrong place." Chesterton said, "To be honest with you, and in talking to your son, I've come to that opinion as well. But it's not evening yet. I've been thinking. I'll continue my studies. I found a job too, just like Benjamin taught me. There was a lot of insider knowledge, Cindy said. You've done the right thing. If you need help, don't run off the beaten path. If you need help, don't run down a crooked path. Come to us. We'll try to find a case that we'll also pay for if possible, Chesterton said. Cindy, with a light sadness in her heart, headed to the training facilities to make some payment and sleep well for her future. Chapter 16. Michael talked to each client at length and sent many back so they wouldn't ruin their looks for nothing. And when he saw the guy with the prize on his face, he realized that today he was going to have a difficult but interesting task. William took a seat in the chair. How did this happen? Michael asked. There was a fight. Cut to the bone. But the scaring won't go away, said William. Why did you get it so bad? Asked Michael. I was saving money, and at the time I didn't have any. How much did you save? But I think it's enough. Let's make a deal so you spend the money on your life, and I'll fix your face, and I'll make sure there are no consequences. You can boldly start a new life and love yourself again, said Michael. Thank you so much. But what's changed? You used to charge a lot of money, asked William. Something inside me has changed. I was sure that a lot of money would make me a big man in the eyes of society, but I thought I was small. But one day I sat down with my parents and told them all my worries. Then they said they were proud of me. These words turned me into a big man on the inside. Now I have no need to hoard wealth. Now I do it from the perspective of my own mission. Now I heal destinies and try to bring people back to life, Michael said. And he was right about that. A couple of days later, William stood in front of the mirror and did not hide his delight. Doctor, I think I look like a Hollywood star, he said, smiling. You are a star, but you don't have to be a Hollywood star. Everyone has the right to be the star of his life, but without fanaticism, the doctor said. 2 months passed, and another patient seemed very familiar to Michael. You've probably already forgotten me, but I haven't forgotten you, said a young, handsome guy in a business suit. Face looks very familiar. I guess we've done business before, huh? The doctor winked. Yes, we have. My gratitude to you is boundless. You didn't take money from me then, but I couldn't leave such a contribution to my life without gratitude. Please accept it, William said from the bottom of his heart and put the thick envelope on the table. But since it's from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you suddenly get wrinkles on your face, don't be afraid. They just appear on the face when the unnecessary things accumulate in the soul, Michael said. The guest did not stay long. Briefly told that he was doing well. Having finished his business, Michael hurried home, where his father and mother are waiting for him. Adriana has all the signs, is also doing well. She had recently called from the canals and said she had met an up-and-coming doctor. Michael did not take offense to her. After all, life is interesting with changes and inner discoveries. This was a phrase from Kathy V.O. Sutkin's book, which people had plundered for quotes, and Kathy herself had started writing a new book. But as soon as she wrote the first page, her mom announced that someone was calling her. Kathy was surprised, for she had no friends left for a long time, and she had not made any new ones yet. She opened the door and saw a long-forgotten face in front of her. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I made you make such a sacrifice, but I understand now, said the long-forgotten face up high. Why aren't you at school? Kathy asked playfully. But probably because I would have liked to go there with you, replied the taller one. And so it happened. They graduated together, each developed in his own direction. True, the adventures in their lives did not end there. But that is another story.